Good evening and welcome to the Planning Board for October 23rd, 2025. At this time, I'd like to now call the meeting to order and begin by introducing the members of the Planning Board and our staff. If you'd like to begin, Jim?
Jim Davis, member.
Cheryl Tagaya, secretary.
Meg Yulfield, member.
Sean Fahey, member.
And Meredith Hall, serving as chair. And this evening, we have with us our new planning director and director of planning and community development. Liz, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Elizabeth Manning, director of planning and community development. Happy to be here.
Great to have you. Our next, we'll move to our administrative items. We do have some sets of minutes, but we have not had the edits that because they all came in at once, so I wasn't expecting to have those yet. So we're not prepared to make a vote on those tonight. But if everyone can review the drafts, and then when Cheryl has time, we'll be notified if there's any edits to those minutes. So I'd like to defer those, the vote on those minutes for this evening. And so the next item we have is our future meeting dates. And our next regularly scheduled meeting currently is scheduled for November 13th. I'm sorry, previously we have town meeting that we're scheduled to meet October 27th. And if it continues beyond one night, it'll be Tuesday, October 28th. So town meeting 27th and 28th. And then our next regularly scheduled meeting is November 13th. And then the following week would put us into Thanksgiving week. At this time, I think that we might not need to have that meeting. We will have just gone through town meeting. We will begin to discuss further our goals and our next steps at the November 13th meeting. So unless there's something that comes up, we could call a meeting that previous week, but at this time, I don't think, unless Liz gets something that would be urgent, that we need to act on.
Agreed.
During that week. So.
And 6:30 for town meeting, right?
And 6:30 for town meeting. Correct. And do you know if we have a room, a specific room?
Yes.
We'll be meeting.
Does 243 sound right? Because that's.
Yes.
Yeah, I posted that on the.
That does.
Posted that notice.
That's our typical room, I
Yeah,
believe.
okay. Yes. Lynn DiNapoli had
Perfect.
set that up for us.
Great. Okay. Good. So, so that will be great for our next meeting. And now we can move to our staff update. Liz, if there's anything that, any new updates that you would like to share with us?
Sure. So, on the topic of meeting dates, do you folks typically get an upfront sort of like yearly calendar that we vote on or that we look at, in advance? Would that be useful? Because, if there's any holidays or any kind of.
We certainly could do that. We've really been sort of looking on a month-to-month basis, planning with, we typically meet the second and the fourth Thursday of the month.
Okay.
So we certainly could have that, so we could.
I was just going to suggest it would be good, because then we could plug in town meeting and back out when articles are due to be submitted for the warrant. Because we always find ourselves up against a time crunch.
Okay.
So I don't know, it's usually in May, but I don't know if it's, excuse me, the same week always in May. And then there's usually a fall in October. I don't know, again, if it's usually the same week. And then, this year we've had a couple of extra thrown in. But
Right.
I think just getting the annual and the fall kind of on a calendar.
Gives us, we can project.
Right.
Yeah.
Is that helpful?
Yeah, that would be.
Yeah, I've done that in the past.
That would be great.
I figured I'd just
I
throw it
know
out
for
there if you
people who
wanted to.
travel and work-wise, scheduling,
Yeah.
whether people need to be out of town, whether they,
Right.
what their schedule accommodates.
Okay.
And town meeting is the same every year, or they set that within a couple of months of the meeting?
It's typically in May, but it can vary depending on
All right, yeah.
where things are and how much time is needed.
I feel like it's like, is it like the first week in May
Yeah,
typically?
I always thought it was like the first Monday in May or something.
Yeah,
Yeah, something
I
like
think
that.
that's always the
Or the second Monday.
goal.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so that
It
was
was
the
pushed back
calendar.
later this year because of the MBTA and making sure that everything was ready. So
Right.
Okay.
that was unusual, so.
Oh, right, right. So the second item is the FY '27 budget. I am needing to have some feedback to Nick on that as far as, you know, what folks are thinking of in terms of additional funding for any studies and what have you. So he said that, oh, actually, I thought we were meeting on the 6th. I don't know why I had the 6th in my calendar. So I was thinking you guys might have bumped it up because of the Thanksgiving conflict. I'll circle back with him on the 13th. He was confident that the 6th was going to give him plenty of time to, you know, take on board, you know,
Right.
anything additional. I think the existing allocation is like 50,000, and I think it's been that sort of consistently for a couple of years maybe. I don't know how far back I looked. I think I got some information back to like FY '24. The rest of the budget is pretty straightforward in terms of, you know, some professional development and supplies and things like that. And then the budget for the admin is in the planning board budget as well. So, so I'll have some more information on that before we meet again. So that's that. Any questions on that?
Just,
I just was going to say, yeah, in the past, we did request additional funding
Okay.
for a consultant
Okay.
for doing the recodification.
Okay,
Because that was going to be a big ticket number.
Yep.
That's probably what you were going to say.
yeah, okay.
That was going to be, you know,
Yeah.
that would have taken all of our funds, if not more. So,
Okay.
but, so we did not get that funding at the last round. So
Okay.
that might be something to earmark and maybe just get a rough ballpark of what.
I think we were asking maybe 40,000
Yeah.
last year
Okay.
to go into the contingent
I think
budget.
so.
I don't think it made it, but I
It was,
don't know
yeah,
how
just
you-
under 100,000, I
Yeah.
think.
I remember
total.
Nick saying we could probably get 100. We could justify 100 for next year when he
Right.
was here. I'm not
Yeah.
Nick, Tim, when he was here.
Okay. So from 50 to 100?
To-
Because you
if-
That's what
typically
I
hit
remember.
50
Yeah,
and
we
then
could- yeah.
maybe a size
Yeah.
100?
We were
If we
looking
could
for
do that.
100.
And Nick did say that something significant like that, and we can talk about when we get to our goals, that if it's something that impacts the town so significantly, that free cash can also be a source.
Okay.
If it's something really that, you know, is impactful to
Okay.
a project that we needed to do,
Okay.
so.
It would be very helpful to have this for you,
Yep.
for the new building commissioner, for our zoning board of appeal, and for us, for applicants, et cetera, because our zoning code is not easy to work with. It has, it's out of date in some places. It doesn't have user-friendliness in terms of like zoning tables,
Right.
dimensional standard tables or dimensional requirement
Yeah.
tables.
Yep.
And so that's not even kind of, what we might want to amend. That's just how it's set up and structured. There's
Right.
things that are in conflict with state law that needs to be fixed. So
Right.
we went to electronic a couple of years ago, finally. So that's much better. So
Right.
getting it fixed would even be more helpful. So that's kind of the background. We've been wanting to do that for years.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Okay.
We've taken a first step, but
Yeah.
yeah, so.
Yeah, good. All right. That sounds very doable. Not easy,
So
but
that's just
doable.
something, but we can,
Okay.
and speaking of, I was able to meet the new building commissioner, and he's wonderful at another meeting, and would like to come and visit us. And so I had mentioned, I think he's spoken to Liz because there's a lot of overlap, a lot of interaction between
Yep.
scenic roads, applications that come in,
Sign review.
sign review. And so I was going to invite him to come to the first meeting in November.
So one of the things I think that would be helpful with that meeting is we draft decisions and then he or his department is left to enforce them.
Yeah.
And we don't have a template. We've been trying to work towards some consistency, but not having a template. I know that one of the prior building commissioners had expressed it was difficult to have different conditions for different projects, so they'd have to have a different, when they went out to the project site, they'd be looking at it differently. And so I think just having that kind of feedback would be helpful. And then one of the things that I did some time ago, again, former building commissioner, so what are you seeing as a challenge? Like there were interpretations that the commissioner had to make that he thought were very difficult. So if we're looking at the codification, how do we make it easier? Like they don't want to have to use judgment. They want to be able to say, here it is, it meets or not in terms of the zoning.
Sure.
And so I think that kind of feedback would be helpful too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would imagine that if this recodification, when it does get underway, like he's going to be he'll be a key part of that committee or task force or however it's comprised, absolutely. And I've been in his office 3 times, he's been in my office 3 times already. So, so there's been a lot of back and forth about what's coming in the door.
I think it'd be just good to have him with us, hear his pain points.
Yeah.
And he probably has plenty, and maybe we'll learn something that we could incorporate into what we do to make, his work a little easier.
And he's got a lot more coming down the pike with the light bylaw, with the ADU bylaw. I mean, he's got to enforce all that. It's just going to get busier.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
It's nice because I think he comes with a great deal of experience from other communities and the way he's seen things work in other towns, things that work or don't work, and so.
He came in today and gave me a heads up on the 40Bs because he said, in my old job, they had me reporting to the state on the affordable units. And he said, I just want to make sure when those certificates of occupancy are issued, that's when that process needs to. And I said, hey, thank you so much for the heads up. I said, I'm so new that I don't even know where the 40Bs are yet. I mean, I know there's 8 of them, right? There's 8, I think. And I read somewhere, I think it was in your report, about, there's 500 units or some odd. Some are in litigation, some just came out of litigation, some are half-built, some are occupied, whatever. So he's great. He's great. For him to come in and do that today, I was like, thank you. Thanks for the heads up.
And I mentioned one other thing too. You mentioned the 40Bs. In the CPC meeting, the chair of the Affordable Housing Trust mentioned that, if they're all built, we could reach or achieve our 10%, but that wasn't necessarily meaning that we had 10% affordable units, because we're able to count all the units, market rate units on the rentals. I think it would be helpful to see how many we actually have that are affordable. So if there's a chart that can be put together, that can provide us an update, that would be helpful.
Sure. Absolutely. The actual affordable units. Yeah, okay, good. And then the folks from MAPC, we had a quick phone call with them, I think it was last week, on the feasibility study that they've conducted, and they're ready to come in and make a presentation to this board.
Great.
So would it be, does it make sense to ask them to come in November? Are you thinking
Yeah, I think
the
that would be
sooner the
great.
better?
Sooner the, yeah.
Okay. I haven't had a chance to look over much of anything yet. I had asked for some, some of the background information on their process and sort of what's already gone into the report to date. But I think they're going to have some slides to share, so I'll make sure I get those out to you guys in advance. And I think they're going to have some scenarios that they can offer that they are deeming feasible. So that's good.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. So that's moving
So
forward.
we'll add that to the agenda. Okay, anything else, or?
I think that's it for me.
Covers that. Okay, great. So then we can move forward to a public comment. I'm not seeing anyone here this evening, but if there is anyone on Zoom, you can raise your hand and we will
See anybody?
invite you
Seeing
for
any.
comments.
No attendees.
0 attendees.
No attendees this evening. Okay. So we can now move to number 4 on our agenda, October 2025 special town meeting item, discussion, Article 5, report and recommendation of the Master Plan Implementation Committee. So when we last met, we spoke on this, and I felt like it was new to people. Some people had just learned that this was an article when it was printed in the town warrant, and I thought it's good just for everybody to take a step back, think about this, think about what's coming, and the implications of what this means and how it would affect the planning board. And after sitting with it, I had a recommendation, which obviously you all would need to discuss. I mentioned it to Liz, and Liz shared it with Cheryl. Cheryl's going to have a meeting with MPIC. The select board is aware, and the warrant committee. But when I was first reading this, what I was concerned about is that it would be confusing to the residents in town and to town meeting on the role and the responsibilities and the process. And this is aside from the report, because obviously we're going to welcome the report, and Cheryl has worked incredibly hard, and so is the committee, and it's a great 40-page document, which honestly I haven't even really been able to dig into yet, and that will take some time.
47. Don't miss the
47,
last
I'm sorry.
pages.
Yeah.
Just didn't want you
That we'll have to dig into to look at the recommendations, but these are at this time recommendations. So what I found and what I expressed to Liz was I thought, I don't want this to be a confusing process where MPIC thinks, their understanding is that they have one set of responsibilities. The planning board believes that they have another set of responsibilities. So the best and simplest way that I think we can move forward with this, because I think no one wants to say, we're just going to take the master plan and put it on the shelf now. Like, I think we all understand that there's things that didn't get completed that maybe we still have the opportunity to complete, things that are positives that would be a benefit in having this new committee. But what the language, and it's a very simple language correction, and we can discuss this, is under Article 5, number 3, is where it says to make recommendations regarding the scope and key focus areas of future master plans. We insert the simple language of make recommendations to the planning board regarding the scope and key focus areas of future plans. What I wanted to, and I think, and Liz can comment too on this, is just to clarify and solidify the role of the planning board when it comes to master plan. And so statutorily, and that's where I think it's very clear, there's no question about the language, is that under Mass General Law, Chapter 41, Section 81D, the planning board is under the authority, not only a majority of the planning board would need to vote on any future master plans and determine what that focus would be, but also any amendments. So all of this is, and Cheryl was saying that, is all we're doing is recommendations at this point. So I just wanted to, because I think there was confusion, when I talked to Jay Fundling a little bit, that
I think there is confusion even about the role of the committee, because I listened to the town moderator and warrant committee's
right.
video, and I said, oh, that's not right. So, our committee is very clear about that, and we spoke at length about that it's recommendations, and we spoke to Nick about it, and he worked on the language with us. So what the committee's intent has been is that it's recommendations. But, as far as this change, I was able to get the committee together for a 1 o'clock meeting tomorrow.
Right.
For me personally, it's consistent with what we've talked about. So, we have a 20-minute meeting scheduled. I don't think it's going to be a long discussion. So,
And it sounded
You know,
like this-
our primary concern, as you know, was that we wanted to see the work continue, that we felt it was, you know, very likely that without some monitoring that, you know, there would be less progress.
Sure.
And that there was still plenty of good work or good recommendations in the plan itself that weren't fully realized, and that that's why we suggested continuing with not just the implementation monitoring, but with making some suggestions. And you saw in the report the kind of the nature of the suggestions or recommendations or not.
Right, right.
Exactly how to do it, but here's an area that needs attention,
Right.
for example.
Exactly.
And I think that's, arriving at those recommendations took some time. So
Right,
just whatever they get turned over to whom is responsible, some of those are responsible parties do lie outside of planning board and planning department, as we spoke about. It's the select board or DPW or Parks and Rec, and you know, like Parks and Rec is an independently elected board, so you know, Conservation Commission and so forth. So the committee has made, as you will remember from early on, recommendations to the select board for Milton Landing, and it made recommendations to the planning board for the zoning. So it's that sort of recommendation, like here's the study or here's what's there. We suggest that you follow up with it.
Which is great. I just wanted to give peace of mind that any changes to the master plan or any future master plans have to
They have to go through the planning
They
board.
have to go through the planning board. And that's where when I was first reading it, I was not sure that, and I just wanted to make sure that everybody was on the same plane as far as what the process would be. So there wouldn't be confusion or any conflict, source of conflict there. But making recommendations to these different committees, certainly, you know.
But I also just wanted to comment on the timing of the recommendation of the article. We were not aware that we were even really going to need an article for town meeting until Nick emailed me and I went back and looked on July 31st. And he said, you're going to need an article at least just to deliver the report of the committee. And we were still working on our recommendations at the time. And we had a meeting on August 4th. And we started our discussion, but the articles were due on August 7th. So we had a 1-week window in order to generate an article.
That's why I didn't know there was going to be an actual article. 'Cause I
No,
didn't think
and then we didn't have meetings. We had a meeting of the planning board on August 5th. So in the middle of those two MPIC meetings where we had to do it. And then we didn't meet until, you know, the middle of September. And then I was traveling for a couple of weeks. And so the committee couldn't, we also had we used to have staff support with the assistant planning. So we actually had a couple of meetings that, you know, didn't get posted in time. So we had to, it pushed our work out a little bit. So just as I said before, it was our intent to have our recommendations done sooner. And I recognize it would have been better for all of you and for all of us if it had been. But here we are. I think we did good work. And I think, you know,
Yeah,
if this, if everyone's supportive of this, I'm sure that would be
And there's a really good resource
clarification.
guide in the binders that have been given, that when we joined as a planning board member, in the very back, the last section, there's a resource guide for planning and all the different aspects, which highlights and sort of gives an explanation of the process of the master plan and for the different aspects, whether it's site plan approval, and it walks you through sort of the basics, and that's where the clarification, which was confirmed with reading the statute, just to make sure that my understanding was, you know, was correct in making sure that what our responsibilities were, and now what this new master plan would be, the committee would be. So, yeah, go.
I definitely, I probably need a few minutes to, I'm not sure how I feel about what you, I'm not opposed, but I have different ideas. And I appreciate the explanation from Cheryl, because as I said in the last meeting, I felt completely uninformed. The first I learned of this was when I took the warrant out of my mailbox the day of our last meeting, and that was the first time I saw it. And, you know, I'm not really a fan of rushing anything, just not. You know, about the only thing I feel like we should rush is if the building's on fire, we should rush to get out. And definitely with regard to any bylaw that really becomes governance of the town. You know, I don't like the idea of you having to hustle so quickly. The 31st of July, all of a sudden, you're informed that you need an article prepared, and it's the worst time of year for everybody. We all plan vacations, and it's hard getting people together. And, you know, when you go back to the beginning of this article, was it 14? I think it was 2014. There was a collaborative effort to recognize that this was an important committee that the town needed, right? And I wasn't a member then, but this was an article proposed by both the select board and the planning board, because we needed more resources than we had. We needed more resources than the planning board and the select board to make sure that we were able to implement the master plan. And I believe that a committee will be valuable to the town. I do, definitely. However, and on Monday night at town meeting, I'll make the same comments with regard to this article at town meeting. I would request that the article be pulled back, that the MPIC be granted another year extension, and we collaboratively create this article together with MPIC and the planning board and the select board if they choose to participate. Its purpose I think its purpose is highly valuable and really important, and we know how time restricted the planning board is. You know, it feels to me like very often we can't even keep up with what comes in front of us, and we have a substantial, you know, I didn't read critically the 47 pages, but there's a lot there. So there's so much in the 47 pages, I think it identifies the importance of having the committee, right? If you didn't realize the committee was necessary, you look at the 47 pages and you realize that a lot of that we don't have enough time to get into the weeds of, and you, Liz, probably don't have enough time to get in the weeds of. So if we have a volunteer committee that will get into the weeds of it and will make recommendations, I think it's a great idea. So I would be a supporter of the committee continuing. I would be a supporter of extending. We granted an 11th year, right? We had a 10-year term. We granted an 11th year at a previous town meeting. Grant a 12th year while we work together to create an article that is collaboratively brought to town meeting, not in a rushed format like this was by a small group of people without any participation of the planning board.
So Sean, is there something in the recommendation that's particularly concerning to you? Because last year, the amendment to the charge of the committee did have an inclusion of making recommendations. It said to make what was changed, so I included that in the back of the report as an appendix. It said insert the following sentence into the charge. Said committee is expected to recommend targeted updates to the town's master plan and to submit those recommendations to the planning board and select board for approval. So we already made that change last year. So we're really just making it a standing committee instead of a committee that has a finite time period.
Well, that's my concern. That's my concern.
You don't want it to have you want it to have a finite time term?
No, not at all. When town meeting last year accepted that article, passed that article, town meeting understood that we were going from 10 years to 11 years for that purpose to be accomplished. Right?
So-
Now, I'm sorry, just let me finish and I'll turn the mic back over to you. Now we're creating a permanent committee. This is no longer called the Master Plan Implementation Committee. This is called the Master Plan Committee. And it will last in perpetuity or until town meeting decides that that committee isn't going to exist any longer. So given that we're going to create a committee that's going to last in perpetuity, And given that, I believe it has great value, I would like the article to be created in a collaborative way. And I don't want to go line by line tonight in the planning board meeting to do that. I would like the members of the committee and the planning board to be able to work together to discuss what's written here and then come to town meeting with an article that we have all worked on together. I'd love to sit down with the folks that are on the committee and talk about their charge. I want to talk about what we were asked to do for 10 years. You know, I haven't, now maybe I need to be told where the reports are, but I asked about the reports, which should be 3 reports for each of the years, which would be now 33 reports. I'd like to be a participant in creating an article that can serve all of the purposes and it can be successful. And if the reporting was onerous over the last 10 years and was too difficult to accomplish, let's talk about it, let's reduce it, let's make it something that can be done. I just want to be a participant in this. I just don't want, I cannot go to town meeting and support an article of this nature that is intended to bring recommendations to the planning board unless I was allowed to be a participant in the formation of the article. And I think that's very reasonable. I will be, when we create this article together, I will be a supporter of it and an advocate for it. We need it. But I don't believe it should be done, you know, absent the full participation of the planning board and the select board if they choose to be participants in it. Their agenda is overwhelming. If they can manage what they have to do and also be a participant in the formation of this article together, great. Love to have them with us. But if they choose to say, no, MPIC and the planning board can put that article together and we'll take a look at it after you have it together, that's okay too. But I'm an advocate and I'm a supporter of a collaborative process. So when we bring this to town meeting, you know, all 5 members of the planning board can say, you know what, I was part of that, I believe it's necessary, and I would suggest to the members of town meeting that you support it.
So just a couple of things, Sean. The reporting didn't have to be in writing. So there were some times I delivered reports as a presentation at town meeting. Other times, you know, like when we brought particular recommendations to either the planning board or to the select board, it was an update at that time. So there also are reports that I submitted on behalf of the committee to the annual report. So if you pull your annual report out of your shelf, if you get them every year, you'll find a report of the Master Plan Implementation Committee. But I also want to mention, like, at the charge of the committee at the end of the 10 years, which was extended to 11, is to report to this board, the select board, and town meeting its recommendation whether the plan should be updated. So our recommendation is that the plan should continue and it should have targeted updates. And in order for that, our feeling was the way for that to be achieved, as our recommendation, is for a successor committee to be established. That's our recommendation. You don't have to take it, but that's the committee's recommendation. There was a lot of discussion about it. We're a committee of 6. We've had a vacancy. We know we could be 7, but we've had a vacancy for a while. And so I did talk to we had a meeting already on the books between our 2 planning board meetings, and I did bring up the discussion from the last planning board meeting and asked the members if they would like to change their recommendation, and they did not. So, you know, I can bring it up again tomorrow in our 20 minutes that we've got scheduled, which I thought would just be this language change. So it was not easy to get everyone together, but I can bring it up again. But we felt as if we've done what the charge is to make this recommendation and to deliver the report. You know, there's how you feel as if it might be different. I'd be interested to hear. But, you know, having chaired the committee for 10 years and having been on the master plan committee for 2 before that and having been on this planning board for 10, there's a lot of work that goes into monitoring this master plan. There's a ton that's in it. You know, if you delve into it, as I've been working on a presentation for town meeting and working on summaries in the report with the committee members, is, you know, you see those tracking sheets at the end of this, all of those strategies, and you look at it, they don't tie exactly back to the top 20 recommendations, and they don't tie exactly back to the 7 goals. So you have, and then they don't tie exactly back to the required sections that are in Mass General Law that you said. So there's a lot to really seeing the big picture, and then the details, and then who's responsible to make sure that something's happening, and all the checkpoints that are required to sort of see all of that information that you find in here is, you know, for the most part, as current as a couple of weeks ago in terms of adding in information. I think one of the things is that it would be good for this board to dig into that master plan, into this report on a more detailed level. There are things that are asked of the planning board to do. This planning board under a different constitution, because I'm the legacy member here, all signed off on what's in it. And so we have not, as a board, acted on some of the things that are in it. So we have responsibility in terms of its implementation that we need to fulfill. And so I would like to have a time in which we really talk about that. We talk about, and after everyone has a chance to read it, so.
I am not diminishing the value, the work, the effort. That's not what I'm talking about at all. You know, I'm not questioning how much time and effort went into it. 2 things I questioned in the last meeting. One was the reporting and whether it had been done, and maybe some of it's been done, but maybe not in a consistent format. It hasn't been the same way every year. I don't know.
It's not the same format every year.
It's hard for us to follow when we don't, you know, maintain format. Or maybe that's just me. Maybe everybody else can follow format when it just continues to deviate. So I question the structure of the reporting and whether it was consistent and whether the charge of the committee was executed. Did it report as it was supposed to report? And I also, and if I could finish, and also, as I said, it came upon us 2 weeks ago. That was the first time I became aware of it. When you met with the members, they certainly didn't hear what I just said within the last 10 or 15 minutes. I support continuing for another year the MPIC as it exists. We don't want to lose that. But I'd like to be able to collaboratively prepare an article that creates this committee, as I said, in perpetuity, to continue the charge of supporting us with master plan and recommendations. I'm not opposed to it at all. I'm telling you we need it, but I do think that the article in the charge of the committee is something that we should all work together on with MPIC to have an article that we can go to town meeting and say, unanimously, the planning board is in support of this article. I am not going to do that on Monday. I will not support this article on Monday. I will say the same thing before the body on Monday that I'm saying here tonight. I don't think it's good governance for us to rush anything, especially creation of a committee that's going to serve a really, really important process.
That would give it a lot more credibility also. I mean, if we just wait a year but not discontinue it,
So,
giving us all a chance to think about it.
right.
I
So
don't
I
see- I
would
don't
have
see what it
preferred
hurts.
that process, I would have preferred that process as well, which would have been under the planning board. Actually, again, something that it talks about in the statute is that we have the right to extend the implementation time frame, which we actually didn't have input in. I didn't realize that last year when it was being extended an additional year, that should have been something that the planning board voted on, and we should have put that article forth. The question is, I don't know if it's out of scope because extending it for 1 year, if that language could be added somehow, but I think it's, unfortunately, I don't think we can make that recommendation at this point. It would have to be a new article to extend that. the implementation committee.
For the planning
but I
board
would
to
need-
extend, or for anyone to
It
extend?
would be out of scope of what this article is, because we would be acting, we
Right.
there is not another article in the warrant on extending it, so.
So if that were the
I don't
case,
know
that
how
would be
would
really
work.
unfortunate. Because if that is the case, that means that by either a yes or a no vote, this committee either is created or the MPEC goes away. That's a shame. That's the choice that we might have if what you're saying is
And that's
in
why
effect.
I'm thinking if we add this language, solidifying what is statutorily the responsibility of the planning board, and as we go forward, maybe we look forward to additional amendments that the planning board would seek to bring to a new article for next.
So if you,
I didn't, I'm sorry, I wasn't aware that there was this thought of this simple
I
amendment.
know, and I'm
because-
sorry.
It's okay.
so
It's
can I
okay.
just point out that the first two items on
Can I
the
finish what I was
chart?
saying? I
Sure,
just want to
go
finish what I
ahead.
was saying. Had I recognized that this is likely what's going to happen, I would have probably done a more, critical review of the article as it's prepared, because I'm probably not satisfied with one change if that's our choice. Honestly, I really need to think about it, but this is not where I want to be. I feel I'm backed into a corner now.
So Sean, just for a moment, the charge number 1 and number 2 are already on the books for this committee, the implementation committee. So the difference is number 3 and having it be a standing committee.
It's a bigger
And-
committee.
It's a bigger committee because the original master plan committee, I think, was maybe 14-ish people. And we felt if you're going to be some recommendations of updates, that it might need or benefit from having more people. But we also felt as if having that many people would be difficult to get scheduling done. And we talked with Nick about that and sort of settled on the 9. And you see that under the membership, we did expand a little bit on and wanting to make sure that, well, a couple of things. People didn't think the joint appointments worked well. They felt as if it's better to have select board and planning board make their own appointments. And then to add as a third body, and generally one that does appointments is the moderator. But the other thing is that those appointing bodies look for geographic distribution, just so that we're not have people who are focused on one part of town.
Yeah.
So those were a couple of things that were a little different, but.
There are, it is more than that. I mean, the criteria to be a member has been expanded. It certainly, I'm not comparing word for word, but it seems to me that there's expanded criteria to be the member. It doesn't matter to me who the individual is that appoints 3 members. I don't believe any individual in town. I don't believe you as the chair should appoint 3 members. I don't believe the chair of the select board should appoint 3 members, and I don't believe the town moderator should appoint 3 members. I like the idea of 5 people selecting 3 people, and I like the idea of 5 select board members selecting 3 people. I don't like the idea of the moderator at any point in Milton's time selecting 3 people. I think the collaborative effort of a group of people identifying who should be on it is a better a way of appointing people. There's more than just a couple of things in here. I'd like this article to have been created, by a collaborative effort of us and Cheryl's committee, the MPEC committee. That would have been a much better process.
So the moderator does appoint all the warrant committee, the conservation commission, I believe, the ZBA, et cetera.
The select board does conservation.
Okay, sorry about that one. All right, just one thing on here. The reason we expanded the expertise, originally it was planning, architecture, economic development, landscape architecture, real estate, and something called other relevant fields, is that there's a lot in the master plan that's outside of those targeted fields. And so the committee felt that having folks who had other expertise would be beneficial to the work of the committee. And that expertise could help inform the recommendations. So, and as far as an appointing body, these are the bodies that generally appoint committees. It's either mostly the select board and the town moderator. And this planning board only has, I think, this committee as one that it appoints to. And I just want to go back to on the question of reporting back. You should recall that I have said that I'd be happy to come and report to this committee, to this board rather. I've requested that committee reports be put on the agenda. And we all know that I don't control the agenda and committee reports when they're done. And so I have always been available to provide that when it's on the agenda. So I just want to be clear about that.
Do you guys keep minutes? Do you guys take minutes of your meetings?
Yes.
Good.
Having them be posted on the website is another challenge because
Well, we could see those. I mean, those could be some of the reports,
yeah,
right?
I mean, we have those.
How do you see, and I agree that we can definitely put that on, our agenda if
Well-
this does,
Well, I think what we agreed upon in the last meeting, I just interrupted you, so
no, that's
go
right.
ahead and
Go
finish
ahead.
what you're
No,
saying.
no, because
We're going to make it a standing, so I don't have the agenda here a moment ago, but we get past administrative and whatever the agenda
Yeah.
is,
Yeah.
that should be a standing component of our agenda we talked about. And so,
Committee reports?
so yeah, exactly, committee
remember
reports.
that.
So,
I remember that.
in the administrative items, I think that's where it goes, meeting minutes, future meeting dates, staff update, committee reports from anybody that's a member of the planning board that is a member of a committee. And that way we'll be ensured that the committee representative
recommendations that will come.
yeah. But, and I sincerely feel bad for you because it seems to me you've chaired the committee for like a forever time. There's a tremendous burden.
Would you like to be the next one?
No, I don't. No, I don't. No, but
You want to extend it? You want to be the next one?
No, I don't. I absolutely don't.
Are you stepping down?
But I do think volunteerism is important, and rotating is important, right? So nobody should have to do it for 10 years.
The committee talked about having maybe one or two people who might bring some continuity across, but that having new people on would be beneficial. And that's why we tried to be as thorough as possible in the report itself, is that, it would be passed on. Correct. I did not have an intention of
I didn't
continuing
think
on to chair it. I feel like, it's
Long
been...
time.
And it's a lot to, every new member who comes on, so it's really a lot to get your head around.
Yeah.
And so I mentioned that earlier about all of the strategies and where they tie into. It is a lot. And how you even, when we started the committee, how do you even begin? Where do you start? And we started with that tracking sheet and assigning committee members certain aspects of it for follow-up. So, I would bring back what the work was here. There were a lot of things that this board was working on, we weren't sitting here not doing anything. So in terms of the things that are still left to do, obviously.
We've actually accomplished quite a bit that's in the
Right.
master plan.
But other members were charged with reaching out to, Parks and Rec, for example, or to, town departments, DPW or Conservation Commission and so forth. Having been this board's representative to the CPC, I'm quite familiar with the projects the last few years. So we didn't have to add somebody to do that. But the turnover on the committee has actually, in 10 years, been fairly low. We've had different people from the select board, and but we've had two members who have been there the whole time, and they were also on the master plan committee itself. So the three of us have brought a lot of continuity but the three of us are ready, for someone else. But
I tried to
having.
get on it, and they were like, I tried to get on it before I ran for for planning board, and there were like 8 people that were running. So it was pretty popular. People wanted to be on
Right,
that
we've
board.
never had, we've had a vacancy now because we were to end, and somebody coming in, actually, I felt also, like the newest select board representative has had a bit of, catching up, but focus a bit on the things that the select board's more in charge of. But
You raise I actually think, a variety of point of view is probably helpful. But, if there isn't enough turnover, you're not going to get much variety in again, these are great conversations to have as a group. I'd love to have this as a group and say, how do people feel about term limits? Is there a limit to the number of years that the town would want someone to serve on that committee? Maybe the limit's 5 years, maybe it's 10 years, maybe it's 3 years. But they're really good. Those, I think we could create, really good structure to a committee if we had a process where we could discuss this stuff together.
So the appointments are, as you know, 1 year currently, and there were people on our committee who thought maybe we should consider a 3-year appointment like some other committees. And other members of the committee felt it would be harder to get people to commit.
Sure.
It's really, if new members, are interested in coming in, there haven't been that many vacancies, but when there have been vacancies, the process was to reach out to the select board's office to see if somebody had filled out the form, to see if they were, which committees they were interested in, and we would have 1 or 2. When we had more was when we added 2 seats, and that was because we were 5, and it was a lot of work for 5. And so committee members actually had suggested to me, why don't we add a couple of seats? This was one, it was actually the select board member at the time who made that suggestion, so that we could help advance the work further. And we did have 7 for a while. And then because we were coming closer to the end, I think maybe folks didn't feel as if it was something to come into at the end.
of the report, yeah.
Well, I think that the MPIC holds, wields a lot of influence, and it's good. But I also read that it's going to be fluid. It's going to be constantly added to and changed. So I think taking a year to think about it and having the planning board's input on, I guess, the charge would be a good thing. Personally, I mean, I can't agree more with Sean.
I'm not going to speak for the other committee members, but I know some members have felt it's time. So you may have a whole new committee for that 1 year
Cool,
extension.
good.
Yeah.
So I've kind of followed MPIC for a while now. I've said this before at this committee and in other committees, I'm not a huge fan of the town of Milton having like 70, 80, 91 committees that are appointed. And we touched briefly on this last time. And I sort of have felt like MPIC has been sort of like a committee that's running parallel to the planning board. And things are being recommended and moving through the process without input from the planning board. To your point, Meredith, that last year the planning board didn't have any input on the extension of time. This year, the planning board didn't have any extension of time. But maybe, I see a pattern forming that I'm not really excited to see. Government should be slow and steady. And I know we've had a lot of vacancies at town hall and things, and people have come and gone and things have been overlooked. And you know, it's unfortunate that that has happened. So if a change of this committee was going to be made, you know, it should have come to the planning board. The qualifications of the members should have come to the planning board. A master plan should change depending on what's going on in town, and a lot has gone on in town in the last 10 years. If you look at all the 40Bs and the other developments that have been approved, you know, we always focus on housing, but there's a lot of units coming to town, and, you know, maybe, and, you know, people might not like what I have to say, but, you know, maybe the focus shouldn't be housing. Maybe we need to wait and see what these new developments coming, what the impact of those units will have on our town before we're moving into creating more housing. You know, it took me, you know, 25 minutes to get here, and, you know, we have a big change on Randolph Ave, which I am a supporter of. It's much safer. I feel better for my family and my employees. But it adds time, and adding all these new units are going to impact, you know, our traffic. I would think a master plan should focus on traffic mitigation. So I am,
It's a big part of the plan.
you know, and sustainability, you know, is important. But, you know, at the state level, that whole sustainability is a moving target. You know, my understanding is it might even be, you know, changed because it's not a realistic goal. But, so we, you know, we do have to be flexible, and, you know, and increasing, to Sean's point, the number of members, you know, I think that's all something that we should have been part of. And I understand the goal of what you're trying to achieve, Meredith, but I also am just as frustrated with the process. And it is unfortunate that MPIC was notified late in the season, in the year. So we are kind of stuck. And I'm not really sure what to do about it, really. But those are just my thoughts, that I don't, if a new committee was going to be created, I do wish that we would have been included in the whole process.
Understanding process is disappointments. I would ask you to think about the content and, you know, what, I guess what the, you know, in discussions with the committee, the idea was, you know, make it a standing committee instead of a committee that has a finite end. Then it went from that, with the targeted updates that we had already been suggested last year that we provide.
Annual.
Sorry?
It says annual updates
Yeah,
here, so
yeah.
it's not semi-annual the way
Right.
we have been.
So we applied a few things here based on what we had learned over the years and what we felt would make the committee better. Not about trying to take anything from the planning board. You know, we, in the very beginning of this committee, there was some fluidity between the planning board and the MPIC. Funds were kind of mingled. It was like, MPIC, you have a little bit more money left. Can you put that towards this planning board goal? And you saw that even here, where we were asked to provide matching funds for certain things that, you know, the planning department, you know,
That makes sense,
got
yeah.
a grant. So there was a lot of fluidity and,
Collaboration.
and collaboration. Of late, some of the initiatives have been a little different because it was the library trustees who came to the committee, or it was the Partnership for a Healthy Milton who came to the committee, and we tried to help them because it was in the master plan to help advance certain goals. And so, it wasn't purely planning board work. So we targeted some attention to things that weren't purely planning board work because, and again, I was kind of looking through the responsible parties that was set up in the plan itself. And if you look in the appendix and the spreadsheets, you'll see all the responsible parties. I pulled it up on the screen at the last meeting. There are a lot of different parties. And so in the beginning, it was more work with the planning board. Later, it was work with others. But it's, it wasn't, we reached out to various groups to see if they were making progress and how it could help. But some people, as they found out about the committee and that there was funds available, came to us because they saw that we could, help them with advancing something that they thought was important in the plan. That's why I say it's not purely planning board, but there's a lot that's not. And those other responsible parties, one of the things that we found in the very beginning is they may not have even been known that they were targeted as a responsible party for something. So that initial outreach was, hey, are you familiar that we passed this plan? Do you know that there's things in it that you're responsible for? And in some case it was, oh really? That they didn't know. That's what I said, it's very multi-faceted, and we're talking about 6 or 7 people who are volunteers, serving on a committee. We were asked, I think, to meet like once a year or twice a year. We met at least monthly, and sometimes more. We held public forums. We engaged consultants. I spoke at the select board meeting 2 nights ago, and Richard Wells, who's been advancing the work at Milton Landing, spoke about our early conversations there, which were probably like 8 years ago, at least, because they've been working on advancing the recommendations that came out of our work. So I really would just go back to, yes, it would have been better for all of us to have talked about this sooner. It's also something where what's the merit in the actual work and the merit in what's in there, not
I would have
process.
been happy to have called a meeting had I known this, because I read in the Milton Times, it was down to the deadline and it was going to print, the warrant was going to print. So I thought, well, this won't happen at this meeting, but I certainly would have called a meeting and said, let's get on the same page with this. But again, I feel like we are where we are. And the one thing I said to Liz, in one of our initial conversations, I feel like our director of planning these are all spokes of a wheel, but it should all be centralized through Liz, through our director of planning and community development.
Remember, we had no planning department in August and
we
September.
So that's, again, part of the reason why maybe this should not have been, we should have had
Just extended for a year and then let's
our
revisit
town
it.
planner on board, and had a chance to just ask the questions. Because a lot of what I had when I spoke to Liz is, I have questions on the process and how this is actually going to work, because are there recommendations that will actually be brought to the planning board? And I don't know how you see with, an annual, how recommendations, and again, we'll have a standing committee, but for the example of, I think a couple of times since I've been on the board, MPIC was moving forward with an East Milton overlay, looking at consultants, and I had to say to Tim, this is work that I really think the planning board should be doing, and you were fine with that. And same with Milton Village at the very end and the design guidelines. This is work that I think we want to have processed and handled it by the planning board. So I guess that's where I think what you're saying is you're seeing things running parallel. We want to make sure, I just want to make sure that communication and that it's coming through before things, before MAPCs hire consultants, that maybe that recommendation should have come to the planning board, and that we should either collaborate with consultants, or maybe it's work that we don't need, that we would say, great, go run with it, but having that level of communication, I think, through Liz is important.
Like I said too, it's the other boards and committees that have a responsibility too. So for example, former planning director said, we've got this opportunity, we need matching funds. Do you think the committee would be supportive of using matching funds? And by the way, we need a decision by whatever date it was, and we could, we happened to have a meeting before the planning board had a meeting, and otherwise we were going to lose the grant opportunity. I said, sure, I can get that on our agenda. So, this is where, we have had challenges because we've had, loss of staff. We've had, some of the continuity over time. So, I take responsibility for the work of our committee and the timeframes in which we've delivered. I will say that we've done the best that we can as a volunteer group.
And it's great.
We're
I mean, what I've
making
seen
our
in the report is great.
recommendations, and I appreciate that you feel like you should have been more engaged with it, but I just ask you to think about whether that this is actually worth doing, to continue to do this. I think this particular committee feels like we've reached our end point, honestly. And so I think if you are thinking of extending for 1 year, you're going to be starting with a new committee anyway. So or at least the majority new committee. So I do think that outside of the process, to think about the merit of it. I know you may not be able to, Sean, but
No one's beating you up on the work. I think it's a
again, I don't want you to.
I'm talking about the merit of the recommendation. That's not the merit of the work.
I value the process. You're an architect. You design. Part of being successful.
Project management.
You do that too. But part of the success of what you achieve in design is the process you go through, right? I feel the same way about this. The success of creating this committee and what the committee's going to do for the town, as I've said, in perpetuity, because it likely is going to stay forever. As long as there's a master plan, this committee will have a purpose. So again, I believe that the best way to do that, if it's going to be here in perpetuity, is to do it together. Do it together. Let's talk about it, and let's dig into it. This was brought together in probably less than 60 days. And I want to go back to a point that you made, because I think you kind of said I would have called a meeting. You didn't miss anything. This is my perspective. Unless you knew that there was an idea that a committee was going to be proposed to continue on, because the only thing we could have expected was the completion of the charge, which is at the end of 10 years, this would have been 11, said committee shall report to the planning board, the select board, the board of selectmen, in the town meeting, its recommendation as to whether the master plan shall be updated under the Massachusetts General Laws, Chapter 41, Section 81D. We all expected the 11 years was enough, and this was the conclusion of the 11-year effort. There was no reason to call a meeting. No reason to call a meeting, unless you had any knowledge that MPIC wanted to convert the committee to a different committee. So I don't think you missed anything. You blame yourself often, and I don't think you should for that.
Well, I didn't, obviously. Again, maybe speak to the committee, see if there would be that opportunity to have a dialogue.
I think you're right that it's going to be out of scope, and unless if you've spoken to the moderator about that, then I don't know what the committee's responding to.
If it would be possible to send it back for further study.
The committee's disbanded at the end of October, the way it is right now. I mean, we thought we already had our last meeting, but tomorrow will be our last meeting.
Can you call a meeting between now and the end of October and propose it to them?
No, but what I was going to say is, if it was sent back, if it was mutually agreed to send it back for further study, that would allow us to have that meeting and establish this committee at the annual town meeting in the spring. So not waiting a full year.
Thank you.
There would be a time lapse, but we would be creating a new committee together and have it ready for spring town meeting.
I think, I don't think there is a method of sending it back, because the extension last year was for 1 year. So it's the end of October. So the committee goes away. There's not a sending it back. So the choices are continuing it or have it go away. Continuing it
would go away
as
for-
this.
It would go away for 6 months, and then if what Meredith is saying is possible, then by the next town meeting, it would come back again. I mean, that's
Because I don't think
kind of
we
like the
can
most
continue it.
upfront way to do it, I think.
I
don't think we
also,
can continue- I don't even think we can continue it as an MPIC committee, because I think that's out of scope. But that might be a question for town council.
I also see value in having Liz be a participant in this. You know, I mean, we're all volunteers. Her responsibility Monday to Friday, and probably Saturday and Sunday, you know, is to be our leader of community and planning and community development. But, you know, I think it's important, if we're going to create a committee that is going to be proposing, you know, suggestions, ideas, you know, to the planning board and also to Liz, allow Liz to be part of it too. She just arrived.
Yeah.
And, you know, really thinking about term limits, I mean, I've heard the selectmen say that they want to bring in new people, get new ideas, you know, you've brought it up. But when you look at some of the committees, people have been on the committees for like 30 years. And to me, that is a very long time, you know, even especially being appointed. It's different when you're elected, because the residents of the town, you know, have a say if they like what you're doing, and you should be there for 20 years. But an appointed committee is different.
So it is 1 year term, it is 1 year
Yeah.
terms.
Yeah, but they still get, even if.
Reappointed.
They get
Constantly.
reappointed,
Reappointed, yeah.
even if other people submit an application to go on a board. Their application isn't always taken, because they give preference to
I know what you're saying,
the members who have been there long-term. And they always say it's for continuity, which I do get that. But if there is opportunity for new people, I think that's important. And I do think, especially for master plan, I think having residents in different parts of the town is really the most important thing, because we are talking about economic development, and there might be, you know, one section of town are like, we don't want any businesses here. But there might be another section of town is like, yeah, bring it on, we want it. So I think that should be the number one.
So if you, you'll notice if you get to read through the report, there is, I think, a couple of places that we touch on that people don't feel like they have an opportunity to participate in town government equally. Maybe they're new residents, not born here, because a lot of people like to talk about being born here.
I think that's changing.
Well,
But
no,
there's-
I
New
applied.
residents are on a lot of committees now, and I'm
Before
town
I
meeting.
was on planning board, I applied to the Shade Tree Committee, and I was not appointed.
So,
And I had the
Not appointed.
qualifications, and I was a lifetime resident. So I know some people say, oh, the lifetime residents get preference. I never got preference.
I'm just saying it's something that needs to be, the report indicates also that it's something that needs to be worked on, that the town needs to work on being more inclusive with a broader set of perspectives. So I don't disagree with you on that there's, you know, there should be opportunities for people to participate. And it's, you know, it's one of the reasons why all of us that are served on this particular committee for a long time have said it's time for new folks. And we wanted to impart or, you know, leave behind, you know, what we've seen after our time on the committee. and let the new folks, take that and do what they may. And again, it's recommendations because the planning board has to make the changes.
So I think just for being at 8:20, our conversation is, this was a recommend, something that I thought would, at least for now, if this does go forward, the language change just solidifies the fact that what statute 40, chapter 40, section 81D states as far as who's responsible and ultimately who has to, the majority of the vote that would have to go through and changes for the master plan. Having said that, I think we all have different perspectives. I think Cheryl has heard everyone's different perspectives. I know it's a brief meeting tomorrow, so I would trust that you could just share that. I think we can agree to
Well, do you
not necessarily take a
intend to
vote.
put this amendment forward? I mean, this, or not?
If this
I could talk
this
about the
article goes
general
forward, I would at least
conversation,
add
but-
that language. I would at least request that language be asked, and maybe that's our motion, that we would request that it's sent back for further study. But if it is not sent back for further study,
Just so we can be,
yeah,
just so we can accomplish before town meeting what can be accomplished, so we're not trying to do this on the floor.
Right.
Would you, as our representative of the planning board, talk to Nick tomorrow and ask him what is possible and what's not possible
Yeah,
with respect to this article? I'd like, I'm not a supporter of this article, even if we make the amendment that you suggested earlier.
Right, I understand.
But I really would like to understand what can be done. Is there no possible way that MPIC
can be extended
continue?
for a year.
Yeah, is our only possibility that this
Or could-
committee ends the end of October and we bring an article before town meeting next spring to create the new committee? I'd just like to understand what
Yeah.
that is. So at least as we're all arriving at town meeting on Monday, understanding, what limitations we have in terms of that.
And would we ever, we can't expand an article, we can always,
Reduce it.
reduce it. And you said this is in perpetuity. Would you ever say this is until May town meeting?
That's what I was also
That's a
thinking,
good
if it could be
I don't know.
created for a shorter term.
I think that these are all conversations. These
So
are
that
all
we could have-
questions that, Nick may be able to answer, hopefully.
That's actually something, Maggie, I was thinking maybe that's a possibility of how we could do this, because we could give this a finite term, so we would have a chance to really create together.
I don't think.
And I don't think it would be
I don't,
terribly different from this,
I'm
but-
probably not a proponent of doing that. We're creating a bylaw that's going to last for, what, 6
Yeah, I
months,
know.
7 months?
Yeah.
And then, and it's going
For
to get
1 year.
complicated to change it. I honestly
I know.
don't think we're going to lose a lot with,
Yeah,
we may give everybody a break, that probably earned and deserve a break, the MPEC members, but I don't think we're going to lose a lot in whatever that period of time is from October until when we can put another article before.
Yeah, the other thing I meant, in the warrant committee's comment, it says, as such, there's a need to create a new committee. So again, I was, a little disappointed that, who determined, what member of the warrant committee or members determined that there was a need to create a new committee, and how come they didn't reach out to us? So when they were discussing this, but, so that's, and again, it went by fast. It went
maybe
by
we would
fast.
ask, so maybe Liz, would you be able to talk to Nick to see tomorrow morning?
Sure.
What is possible to allow this opportunity if we were not to move this, or, to afford us time to have some input into what was created here.
Okay.
Or extend, and at least extend MPIC, because I think we all I think we all agree that having something to keep moving forward on the master plan would be our intent.
Yeah, the intent is not for MPIC to go away, it's just to have a more collaborative approach to creating the new MPIC 2 or whatever we're calling it.
If it's possible to extend it for another year, I just don't see, I agree with what Cheryl said. I don't know within the function of town meeting and articles, I don't know how we can do it. You know, I don't,
Yeah.
but maybe there's a way.
I don't see it, so I've been on the WARC. I mean, I've been a town meeting member
That's what I don't see it either.
for, 14 or 15 years. I just don't, having served on the warrant committee for 4 years before this board, I don't see the mechanism for it, but I think it's really, that's more than Nick, it's maybe a conversation for the moderator, but.
You know, we had the experience with our own, remember our
It's in
article, our, was it our
Site
site
plan?
plan approval? And we were trying to make 6 simple changes, and we couldn't accomplish that at town meeting. I envision if we tried that kind of discussion
No.
again on Monday, it's just going to be, it's going to be so hard, and it's not going to be an article that, you know, no article should be amended to a great extent in town meeting. That's just an opinion I have, but.
Well, town meeting may or may not vote to support the article, so I think what Meredith was asking is whether you'd want to, if they choose to support it, would you want this amendment in it for that, in that event?
So that's my concern, is if we make the change, do town meeting members then think, oh, the planning board supports it?
Right.
And they vote to pass it, because the planning board is supportive of the article because we supported this change. I understand.
I think we can make it clear. I think we could make that point, that we have concerns that this has not been a collaborative process.
I think town meeting would want to know what you would do differently than what's in the article. And I haven't
think
heard
we have
yet
to-
what you would do differently, except maybe you wouldn't have the moderator appoint some. But I haven't heard anything else that's different, other than it would be a process in which people would participate in.
Well,
So town meeting may
I
ask
think we'd have to look at
board what
whether
they're
it should be in
thinking.
perpetuity. I think, yeah.
Just give us 6 months
You
to
know,
think about it, would be
yeah,
nice.
You know,
Above board, just so we can all talk about it.
Yeah, because I think we have not really had a chance to talk about it.
Oh, I'm
Look
just
at what other towns are
anticipating.
doing, you know, what,
have Liz's participation in it. You know, I mean, we've talked about plenty of things here tonight, Cheryl. I don't think it's fair to say that I haven't heard anything other than 9 members and 3 being appointed by the moderator. You know, we've talked about the geographic importance of all parts of the town. We talked about this is a pretty expansive criteria. Building construction, so there's no way I'm getting into it because building construction is not a criteria, so I'm out unless I'm a planning board member that comes in. So, you know, we haven't really been a participant in it. I'd like to have a fixed date for when reports are due. Reporting annually is great, but let's decide when the article's created, what date is the report due? Every committee then can drive towards that date. That's not in there. There's plenty of things that we could improve this article with if we had enough time to think about it and to do it, you know, and I'd like to do it in a collaborative way, you know?
So the article's submitted by the committee, and so you can choose not to support the article. And that's what you can, if you're asked your recommendation or you choose to speak at town meeting, that's the way you could do it. I don't see how the committee can withdraw the article, then we're withdrawing our report. So, you know, we have to, we're mandated to report, and so we're going to do the report. I guess somebody could move to strike the rest of it.
Can I ask a question? though?
I don't see a mechanism for continuing it for another year.
Well, it doesn't, you didn't have to have an article to have a report.
Yes,
Why?
Nick said we did.
Why?
Because there's no, when we have the annual town meeting, there's a article that allows for the delivery of reports, but there was no such article for this fall. Look, I'm not the expert. I'm going by what the town administrator told me, is that we needed an article that at least did that. And so when we met on August 3rd, we discussed that that's our minimum. We could consider whether there was anything else we wanted to include in the article. And whether there was a lot of discussion about the remaining concern about a plan not sitting on the shelf, about there being a continuing monitoring of the implementation. There were members who felt as if having an extension every year was not the best way to do it. Members suggested it should be standing. And so it was a, 6-person discussion about different ideas that everyone had. And this is,
At the beginning of August.
in August, but we've been talking about our recommendations for over a year.
Yeah, no, but I'm just feeling like if the idea of continuing the committee started in the beginning of August, we could have had a conversation about it before our last planning board meeting. But
So it went from passing an article to give a report to passing an article to keep your committee going in perpetuity? Is that what I just heard?
To create a new committee.
You know,
Creating a
I
committee
feel
in
like we have
perpetuity.
spent like an hour and a half on this tonight,
Is that
and
what
an hour and a
happened?
half on this
I'm
the last
confused.
time.
Is that what
And I've
happened?
explained to you all, I think, as many times, now we're just rehashing the same things. I don't think it's productive any longer.
Yeah, so I just and this is a question for Nick. This has been a requirement of NPIC for 10 years to do a report. And during those 10 years, MPIC didn't have an article, yet they submitted a report.
It was part of the reports that were under that blanket article in the annual town meeting.
So that's my confusion, is why previously up until this point, MPIC did not need
Because
an article?
this is a special town meeting in that he said that they didn't have that standing article which allows for the reports of the committees like they have at the annual town meeting in May. I was just under the assumption initially that that's what we were working towards and we would just deliver the report. But the report is also the recommendations, and the committees really felt that that this should be the recommendation. I'm speaking on behalf of the committee. I am not speaking on behalf of myself as one person. I can tell you there was a lot of discussion about this, and you can go back and watch the tapes. I mean, there's tapes of our meetings. I thought we have a pretty good set of minutes for all of our meetings. They've all been submitted to Nick, before that to Cheyenne, and so.
And the committee was originally established at the 2014 October special town meeting, so that's why the timing doesn't sync up.
Right.
For the annual.
Right. Okay, so let's if we're going to have a vote or a request that we vote to request that Liz would speak to Nick Milano tomorrow morning regarding, would it be possible to extend MPIC's current, the committee currently extend for another year in order to add time to collaborate?
Within the scope of this article?
That would somehow would have to be incorporated on that.
Couldn't have a new article any longer, so
Yeah.
it would have to be within the scope
Within
of
It would
that.
have to be within the
So-
scope of this,
Right.
if that's possible.
Okay.
Or
Or the
Or-
idea that they could continue in some fashion from now until a new article could be brought
Yeah.
forward in the spring?
yeah,
What could
language.
that look like
Term.
if they could continue in some fashion?
Yeah.
And what's the penalty of not giving a report? What's more harmful?
Seems to be none.
What's more harmful, not giving a report or creating a committee that is not well-baked?
B.
So I would think B is more harmful.
I would take offense to calling it not baked. I think the committee feels it is baked, and that we spent a lot of time putting and thought into putting it together. So whether you think that you should have been a part of the process is one thing. To call it half-baked, I take offense to.
So,
Not baked with the planning board.
all right. So could we continue that and say, in the event that that is not possible, would people be open to supporting that language change? If this is going to go forward to town meeting, it doesn't change what the statute says, so whether that language is put in or not, the statute is what the statute is. To me, it makes it more clear for future planning boards and future master plan committees to understand.
But when we go through our recodification process to align with state statute, that might get fixed in this.
Well, possibly. I think we'd have to add that language. But we don't have to add that language. MPIC can add that language
What language?
for the planning board, recommendations to the planning board. Because it's your article, so technically you don't need for us to vote on that. So if we want to not vote on that language, MPIC and the warrant committee could do that together with support of the select
I
board.
think that would eliminate the confusion that Maggie suggested earlier.
Okay.
Because, well,
We don't-
it doesn't, changing that language doesn't represent my point of view as a member of the planning board, so I'm not going to support that, but
And I'm fine with that. That's why I made it clear when I was talking to Liz and to, well, it went through Liz, but the language changed.
Let me restate myself, because I don't think I stated myself properly. I think the language is fine, but I have bigger issues than the language.
I get it.
okay?
I totally get it.
So I don't disagree with your
I
language.
get it.
It's,
So that is something, if it's not pulled back for further study, if MPIC can't continue for another year, and this does end up going to the floor, it's something that MPIC can, and the warrant committee can add that language. If they choose to not hold it for further
We
study.
could make a friendly amendment? Is that possible? Or is that, no?
We could on the floor, but I think they rather have everything in advance. There's a meeting at 2:30 tomorrow to go over where everything is, any changes, so. So I just would, then that can be our motion. You know, we can see if that's a possibility and then see if that's acceptable to MPIC.
yeah, I mean, really, the direction here is dependent on what Nick informs Liz can and can't be done.
Yeah. All right. So I don't know if we need a formal vote on that, but
I don't think so.
I don't think that we've just asked Liz to make that request, so. And you can let me know. All right, so I think we can move on at this point because we have sort of gone around with this quite a bit. So, so the next thing on our agenda we have before, site plan review. Yeah, the rules and regulations discussion. Liz, you'd,
Yeah, I
wanna just talk about that a
think,
little bit.
so I shared this document with the board probably about a week ago. You know, it was one of the first things that Nick had asked me to follow up on, was to see sort of what our existing forms and checklists, et cetera, look like, and how we can, you know, make them conform to the new site plan review bylaw that was just adopted. So it's 17 pages, but honestly, it's a lot of detail in terms of the process. The first couple of pages have a lot of information about just how you file your application, which I personally find very helpful, because especially if you've got different people that are going to be touching certain parts of this thing, whether it's an admin or people in different town departments or whatnot. So that, I think, is useful, but this is an early draft. So please, you know, like, no problem with any feedback or anything like that. Article 2 is really simple. It just is, I just copied and pasted out the new language in the bylaw for the various items that need to be included in the application. The third element is the application form, which isn't very good. It didn't translate very well, so I'm probably going to look at the existing form and just kind of maybe play with that a little bit more. And then there's a couple of pages that are probably somewhat duplicate a little bit, like this table of contents might duplicate, some stuff that you're going to get on the title page of a plan anyway. It kind of depends. Sometimes you may not have like a full-on,
Depending on the project, because we get all different sized projects. So
Exactly.
the different scale, it could be something.
Exactly, right? So things like that. So it's all just kind of, again, this is an early draft, although I'm pretty sure stuff's gonna start coming in the door, so we definitely gotta get going. I have a meeting, the last item is the fees and the review fees. I have a meeting next week with the former town engineer, who's now the DPW director, Marina Fernandez. We've had a really early conversation about how the process works here in town in terms of like the peer review and whatnot. So I think I shared this with her. So we're gonna talk about this a little bit. Ideally, I'd like to have, 5 or 6 firms like that are already
Right.
pre-vetted, and we can just, pick up the phone and we have a relationship where we can just kind of get stuff out to them quickly. The timeframes in the site plan review process are pretty tight. I think it's like, stuff has to get in front of you guys within like 30 days or something, or no less than 30 days, and then has to be turned around in 75 days. So, that's pretty quick. So, like you said, some of these things are gonna be pretty simple and straightforward, and some of these things are gonna be much more, complex.
And we did put language in to allow for an extension if we do need peer review, because we do have like the memory care on Highland Street project. There was a lot of peer review consultants that we needed.
Yes.
That we were waiting on them, especially if they would go back and they would make changes.
Okay.
So we did but we also wanted to keep it tight if it was something that was a really simple, straightforward parking situation, or
Yeah.
something,
Okay.
loading zones, or,
Right.
simple.
Okay, all right.
So,
Yep.
speaking of the memory care, when I was looking at that section on the project review fees,
Yeah.
I think it's worth seeing how much was spent there on peer review.
Yep.
And then, I think on the Goddard School, was it? Or
Okay,
we had some peer review.
okay.
On the, and I think we had peer review on 440 Granite Ave, which is residential. So it just would,
440?
yeah, so it would be helpful to kind of see how much was spent.
Yep, yep,
Um,
okay.
Those, I don't know that any of those were less than 10,000 square feet though, so maybe, I'm not sure where we would have an example of that one. And just one thing, in the dimensional form, I think it would be helpful to have building height in stories and in feet,
Okay,
not just one category.
Okay.
And then on ratio of total floor area to lot area, we spend a lot of time on the MBTA community zoning talking about the term floor area ratio, so FAR. So I think we should probably, that's a requirement in that zoning. So I think if we are consistent with our language.
Yeah.
This is one of the things that we're not consistent about in our base bylaw, is any definitions, they all vary. Heights even, the definition of height varies across different sections of the bylaw.
Right.
Which is one of the things that you'll uncover, which doesn't make any sense, but how it's measured. And then I know,
so just a language.
yeah.
Just language.
Well, I just felt like in that table, we
floor
should just
area
say the
ratio.
floor area ratio.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay,
And then, because if we're getting these under that MBTA community zoning, it will be consistent with the zoning.
okay.
And then there's
But not necessarily the other zone.
not necessarily the other sections, right? Because we don't have, honestly,
Yeah, it's pretty,
we have floor area ratio requirements in our underlying zoning.
Okay.
Then you read along later and you say they don't apply to single families. And
Okay.
so that's why you'll see some really big houses on some what look like very small lots. But if you have a different kind of a building on that, then you are subject to it.
Okay.
The other thing, is the submission requirements. I saw where there's a lot of paper, and then that
Yeah,
you
I
can
didn't
look
know.
at it. Once you get the 8 copies, you can look at it and decide that it's incomplete, and then all those 8 copies are
Yeah.
wasted.
Yeah,
So
that's- yeah.
I'm thinking that you should be able to look at it first in PDF
Yeah.
format.
Okay.
Or one
Or one
single-
set for you.
one
just
set printed, 'cause I think that
For your
is-
department to review to see if it's complete.
Yeah, I
Then
think the
once you
department should have
determine,
one copy,
Yeah,
yeah.
that it's complete,
Then,
then, like, I am, we have, and over my tenure here, transitioned from getting full-size plans
Okay,
to getting PDFs and only plans on request.
okay,
I usually request a plan, because I do like to
to roll it out.
see out the
that's why-
detail.
Yeah,
Some of them are really complicated.
But for example, most of us don't have the technical expertise to read the full stormwater report
right,
on paper form.
right.
And then we'll get these full sets of drawings at full scale, 3 or 4 revision sets.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
that's not necessary.
Yeah, I don't know whether or not like the fire chief likes paper, and I don't know if
yeah.
you know what I mean? Like, so I'm still trying to kind of figure that out. And so this was kind of like an in-between, but I totally hear you. Less paper the better. So, and like even tonight, like I was like, oh gosh, are they expecting me to like make a copy of this packet? Like, I don't know. So I'm still trying to kind of figure some of that out, but I am the same mindset, the less paper the better. But if we can get a couple of full-size sets, especially if people
Yeah.
like them, I just don't know who wants them.
Right.
I actually personally would like to roll something out sometimes too, you know?
So I love them, it's just impractical to roll them out on this table during this meeting.
Right,
So,
Right.
And especially if there's a landscape plan and the plant materials listed on the big plan, where sometimes it's better to have it, in the document itself and not just on the plan. That could be helpful.
okay. Yeah, all right, I'll think about how to
But I thought
reflect
this
that.
was great. I mean, as far as a first draft and.
Right, I also appreciate
I
that,
thought it was awesome.
yes.
Yeah,
I just got a little afraid being a small-town developer if you're going to do like a 3-family. Does this trigger the $5,000 and the 8 sets of plans and all that stuff? It's like what, or
I
let's
think
think of
this-
like 3 units to 10 units.
Right,
Seems like a
yes.
lot to go through
Yes,
for a project that small.
yes,
So how do you sort of,
But you do have to go
Put
through
those
site
out.
plan approval.
and even at that, it seems like a ridiculous amount of protocol for such a small project. So could you lean on the waivers a little bit? Is what I was wondering. And you'll be determining that.
yeah,
So maybe if you let it be known that, look, a lot of this stuff can be waived,
right,
it might not deter a smaller developer from actually doing something.
right, yep,
Because if I saw this, I'd be like, okay, I'm going to be tied up for another year, and you know what? I'll
Right.
just remodel this single family, flip it, and make my money and move on.
And here's the hard thing, this is literally, with the exception of this fee, part that I included here, this is literally what's in the bylaw.
Oh, no, it's cool. I'm just, it's great.
So
I'm not
that's-
diminishing it at
so
all. I
that-
think it's
yeah,
awesome.
No, I know, and that's the thing that's hard, is that I don't necessarily disagree with you in terms of, sort of the complexity and what's required under this process, but that's what's in the bylaw. So it's like,
It's a catch-all bylaw for all-scale projects. That's why we put the waivers in. So I think what Jim's saying is having you understand that,
yeah,
so that when someone comes in and initially meets with you, talk about the waivers based on
Right,
the scale of
right,
project.
right.
And, personally, I think, in the beginning, you probably want to talk with the board. I'm getting, you don't have to say where it is. You say, I have an inquiry about this scale of project under this section of the zoning bylaw. We're thinking that these waivers would be appropriate. What do you think? But I think we kept it in there too, that even if we grant the waiver, after we're reviewing the project, we reserve the right to ask for something that we've already waived, just as the project review proceeds, that we may change our mind about it.
yeah, okay, yeah, absolutely. Yes.
good. Thank you, that's great. And will that be online eventually, that? Or is that they come into the office and have that preliminary meeting and?
The plan, I found a couple of things. I guess there's a form on the website,
Right, yeah.
which I just discovered like yesterday or the day before. So was that typically how people were submitting their documents? Because you could upload documents there, and, maybe you folks wouldn't have kind of seen
I
that
think they
side of
emailed
things.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think
would
they
things
go
were
to-
emailed.
I went to the website and then I would print it off and then I hand walked mine in.
Could you
Yeah, I
fill
think
it
a
as
lot of things were
PDF and
dropped
then
off
submit it?
to the
Okay.
planning department's office. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a web form that's on the page, and it's extremely detailed. So when I looked at that, I thought, oh, this is a whole lot more detailed than the form itself, the checklist form itself, which is, I think, what most people probably download, and they check, do I have this, do I have this, do I have this? So, there's some cleanup work there, you know? My inclination is to not I was hoping to have this be sort of a fillable PDF, so somebody would just kind of
Right.
download it, and then they would, do their thing, print it out and bring it in.
Right.
Maybe we can migrate to a web form. I'm not super confident with that, especially with this process where they're walking in here and they're getting it stamped and,
I think just downloading that PDF, as a PDF
Yeah,
makes
so
sense.
I think that's the goal. That's the goal, is to have it be just something,
That's
a
great.
fillable PDF they can download.
That's wonderful that you've already gotten that first draft done. That's
awesome.
the draft.
So, anyway, now the next thing I was working on today was the slimmed down for the ADU. So once we get the slimmed down for the ADU, then that's gonna be a lot easier for me to have a conversation with the person with the 3 to 10 unit project. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah.
Because I can pull that out and it can be like, this is what we're gonna do when somebody wants to do a detached ADU, or they're gonna do an extension, what have you. It's gonna look a whole lot more like this.
I also
And
think we
this is
should,
this is what your smaller project, your smaller scale project, even though this is 20 pages, there's probably 20% of this that's gonna apply to you.
in light of the AG's letter, should you have a pared down one for Dover amendment? No, because ADUs are Dover amendment. I'm thinking like we've had several childcare facilities that we've reviewed. So maybe, because we can't apply certain of our design standards, I think, to those projects, right?
Well, the way it's written, it's the specific site plan standards, like within the ADU bylaw.
No, I'm sorry, I pivoted from site plan approval to the AG's letter on the site plan approval bylaw
Yeah,
to,
The ADU,
on the site plan approval
or Dover amendment.
Dover amendment.
yeah.
So ADUs are Dover amendment, but MBTA community is not. So we have in that site plan approval bylaw, a lot of design standards, which I don't think that can be applied to Dover amendment uses. So I'm just wondering if we need a different kind of checklist, as the AG's letter cautioned, right?
So you have
A
site
little
plan
more
review, you have ADU, and then you have the MBTA stuff, right? So
And-
there's, the ADU has its own design standards,
Right, so the,
and then the MBTA has its own design
Design
standards.
standards.
right. But, no, we pulled those out.
Yeah,
and
I
we
don't,
put
I
those.
don't, I don't think
we
it does. You
pulled
got
those out.
dimensional-
And we
Right.
put
Yeah.
we put the design standards in the site plan
In the site
approval
plan approval,
bylaw.
Yes.
Right.
But it's the same bylaw that would apply to, let's say, a childcare facility. And so those design, the way I read the AG's letter is, there's certain things that you can subject the Dover Amendment uses to in that bylaw, but not everything. So
Right.
I guess my thought is that this particular rules and regs for site plan review is for the non-Dover amendment, and that we should probably have a Dover amendment version. ADUs aside,
Well, the
because ADU is
are-
also
the
Dover.
The ADUs are the Dover Amendment.
Yeah, but we also get
Protected
like,
use.
you would have a house of worship or something related to that.
Schools, the
Oh,
preschool.
yeah.
Preschools,
Oh, yeah, sure,
tho-
sure.
those
Oh, I
kinds of
see, I
Dover
see.
Amendment.
So if and when those types of situations come up.
Yeah, so I've reviewed at
have
least
something
3
separate
childcare
for those.
facilities here in Milton that are pretty big.
Yeah.
And those,
Well, you said the Goddard School,
right,
right? And then,
the Gardner School,
The Gardner School.
And there's also the farm
And
stand on Robin Street,
then-
something totally
Just gonna
different.
okay,
the early, what's it
Yeah.
called? The Little Sprouts was the other one.
Little Sprouts, yep, okay,
But you're right, that one on
Just another Dover Amendment
Robbins,
use.
yep.
okay. Okay, yeah, all right. Yeah, I guess I
Look at
wasn't thinking
those.
that they were coming up sort of that regularly, but I did read something in your report, which I read every page.
Thank you.
I can show you my notes in the margin. There was
Tell me
something
something
about,
we forgot, I'm sure.
We don't typically get that many, but we just happen to get a group all like within a short period of
it
time.
says
I
in
have a
here
hard
that
time
you're,
believing the town could absorb more. I mean, we have a lot of daycare right now.
They say there's huge demand, like the last one that came in was from the Midwest, right?
yeah.
Tennessee.
I think of that as
The
Midwest.
You have
demographics
the
are,
original, the OG school, Milton Academy.
Yeah.
And you get the spillover,
They have their own daycare.
From Milton Academy.
They actually have their own right across the street from me, this little daycare.
Yeah,
There was something in here about how the employment was reflective of healthcare institution, you
Yeah.
know, so.
We have Curry College, Lebaret, Milton Academy.
Yeah,
Yeah, and you know, like Curry College has
Delphi Academy.
expanded over the years, and there's pressure points with neighbors on those expansions, so. But we have no.
right.
say on that.
So I just think we run into this, I think, as new members have come onto the planning board. What can we really do under Dover Amendment uses in terms of our review? And sometimes we really kind of push the applicant probably a bit beyond really trying to encourage them to do things that we can't mandate. But it would be nice to have a clear
So the
form
Gardner
anyway.
School was great to work with because they were very
Those guys were
amenable
awesome.
to
He was fantastic.
window treatments. We were able to get detailed.
Lowering the building, everything.
Changing
He
the
even
site.
took out the logo. Remember there were 3 logos?
I think the biggest
never
move was
pushed him on it, but
changing
he
the
did it
building on the
anyway.
site.
The building on the site, it looks so, I mean, just seeing it the
Awesome.
way it's going, it's so much
Great.
better than
Yeah.
what was originally
gonna be
proposed.
great.
so.
Yeah, there's some good language in here in this letter.
Yeah.
The one about the Article 39, right, from September 18th? Yeah, yeah, so it's, it enumerates
Caution.
bulk and height, yard, lot, setbacks, open space, parking, and building coverage.
So
pretty
some of
much
the
it.
other design things that we like to think about on other projects,
Bulk and
we can
height,
encourage, but we can't mandate.
yeah, right, and you can't really get too far beyond. So parking, obviously, you can loop in, traffic impacts based on parking. I mean, there's ways to make a case, depending upon the scale and sort of, what's going on in the immediate neighborhood and things like that, but that's just kind of off the top, but.
Okay.
All
Well,
right.
whatever thoughts you have about that, I'm sure we all would be welcome to hear them.
Okay.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So we can move on and we can just briefly touch on these. We've had this discussion before in August, and I just wanted to loop Liz in on where we had, where we stood on our conversations, goals that we've discussed, things that we've been cleaning up with, such as our traffic mitigation article, which is coming out. But, just sort of thinking about prioritizing, and we can put this on the agenda for the next meeting too. But these were some of the highlights that we had, that I just discussed briefly, that we have been targeting and wanting to see come to fruition. And tonight, we've already talked about the hiring a consultant for the zoning, the recodification, the sign bylaws, something I think would be really good to tackle, and maybe it's somewhere between the article that we last had, which was very dense in our 2017. Maybe now that we have KP Law, we can say, okay, maybe we don't need it to be as dense as it is. We can, streamline some of that language to be a little more simple. It's really, I think a lot of that language was for people who were in the design field, who are expertise on how the signs are actually designed, but we can talk about that later. But maybe have KP Law go through sort of where we were in our draft.
Yep.
Just to take a look at
Is
that.
that in their hands now?
Not yet. I thought once town meeting, let them get through their first town meeting, and then we can let them maybe Darren can begin reviewing that, just to give us enough time for the target of our spring town meeting. I don't see recodification happening for, certainly not spring town meeting, and I think that will be a longer process. So maybe we think about timelines, but I think sign review, I think we can do that for spring, the sign bylaw for spring town meeting.
Can I interrupt real quick?
Yeah.
Do you think it would be prudent to give that to a consultant to look over what we did for the sign bylaw? To see if they can condense it for us as opposed to giving it to a lawyer right away? Does that make any sense or no?
Well, I think because it came from Tim and from our, and John Zikowitz and sort of some things that they were looking for, I think every town's really different and unique on what they want to control. I think there's some big things that we would just want to,
I think a fresh set of eyes, like Liz, would be great.
yeah,
Do you like
that's
it,
what I was going to
Patsy?
say. Liz, if she reviews it, because she's seen what some other towns have done.
I mean, yeah,
So-
I will know better. I will know better in the next month or two. Like how much
yeah.
bandwidth I'm going to have to, because I like your idea on that, because honestly, the design guidelines or whatever, the facade, I forget the name of the booklet or whatever, but that's really old. And
Yes.
it's still very good. It's a solid sort
But
of,
it's old. It's dated, yeah.
And it doesn't necessarily mean you have to toss the whole thing out, but I'm not an urban designer, like, I mean, there really probably could be a really, good
Yeah.
reason. The other thing I haven't done either is I haven't really looked very closely at the design guidelines that were adopted by, did you guys use like Howard Stein Hudson, I think, right, for something? Was that East Milton or was that Milton Village?
MAPC did East Milton, and the village was,
I saw something from them.
Dunker,
yeah, it was someone else. It was a different,
I haven't looked at those. See, I don't know how much of like this stuff is already sort of like contained in some of those other
It is,
documents.
yeah.
And I'm really just kind of like, so it's hard for me to say. But I definitely am not the person that's going to be able to like, say, oh, this is what it's supposed to look like
Right.
from a design perspective. That's not my.
and John Zikowitz was really good. I think a lot of what this bylaw does is it puts into writing, like our site plan review, the process that an applicant goes through. So it's sort of like the site plan review where it says, okay, this is what I'm supposed to show up with when I want a new sign, depending on,
Which doesn't typically go in a bylaw. You know what I mean? So that might be kind of like,
Yeah, so
might
maybe
be
we-
the first thing to think about, is to think
Don't
about
need
sort
that.
of like, as per the rules and regulations of whatever. And then that way it kind of takes some of
Yeah.
that stuff, kind of takes some of that heaviness and weightiness out of, and especially if it can confirm, that's another thing I'm recognizing very quickly is that, every process has a different, every permit and what have you, has a different, nothing's terribly streamlined. So, it would be fabulous if you could point to your rules and regulations and say, follow this procedure, because all of these different items would point right to that one procedure. But that's not how things are set up today.
So it would be
some of that
interesting, yeah.
It's going to take time.
It
but
will take
those-
time,
those
and,
are- yeah.
and as the signs applications start to come in, I think you'll be able to look through that and say, okay, because that's what John is gonna ask, that's what the building department asks for, and that's what John,
Right.
when he has people come before him,
Yes.
that he's gonna say, okay, do you have these dimensional requirements, do you have the,
Yes.
whatever.
So one thing that I'd like to give you as background is that this effort really started because the sign review committee would make recommendations to approve or not approve or with conditions. And sometimes if there was a denial or a condition that an applicant didn't support, there might be an appeal and the bylaw, the guidelines don't have the enforcement that the bylaw does. And there would be inconsistencies in the decision or in the guidelines versus the zoning, or not enough in the zoning that it could be supported on appeal. So just have that lens in mind when looking at.
Didn't it go to the selectmen at one point?
That's what it does, and it's.
I don't know that it does that anymore.
They still, well,
They
right
still-
now,
they
under our
still
current
take
bylaw, it does still go to the select board. So that's one of the things that we would be changing is that
It would go to the Board of Appeal.
there would be certain things that are prohibited,
Yeah.
but then certain things that would be allowed in certain circumstances
Okay.
to go to the ZBA for approval. But we wanted, like billboards, we wanted to make sure that somebody coming who wanted to put a billboard, it's strictly prohibited.
Right.
And it would not be something that we would want to see,
Right.
then.
And that kind of gets back to that conversation about recodification, because that would be like a prohibited use.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like that would typically be where that would land. It would land as like a prohibited use, like
Right.
sort of across the board, like every zoning use, no, across the board. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So I don't really have a quick answer on.
So
yeah.
I'm not expecting you to say that I can
No.
write this. The reason why I was asking.
Should we have a
is
consultant come
my-
in and help?
Yeah, my whole vision of this planning board was, if you want to come to the board with an idea about a sign bylaw, we find a consultant, we give them bullets of what we think the bylaw should look like. They come back to us and they report. We all sit around and talk about it, add things, it goes back to the consultant. You do that in 2 or 3 iterations, you have something that looks decent, you give it to the lawyer, they look it over, and then it goes to town meeting. I mean, what we did for MBTA zoning and what we did for site plan review and what we did for ADU bylaw, I get it, we were under the gun to do it, but personally I find it ridiculous that we were here for 4 and 5 hours doing stuff consultants should be doing. We should be just vetting the process and adding our 2 cents. That's personally what I think a board should do. I understand you can write zoning and that's great, but if you get hit by a bus tomorrow, who's going to do it? We have to have systems in place that can actually, one of us step off the board, somebody else needs to fill those shoes and be able to add to the conversation and push the article forward.
So KP
Just based
Law
on the
is,
conversation we just had going around between you and the select board and the ZBA, we should have a consultant doing that for us personally. So we should have a Rolodex, 3 consultants deep that can handle all this stuff. That's the way I
maybe
envision
there
this
is,
board.
but KP Law, that was one of the things that I liked about them is they did have specialty. They had people who are specialized in writing that type of
Okay,
writing
so
this
if they
type
can
of
do
zoning.
both, that's great. And if they can come and,
That's
I'm not
what-
saying,
yeah.
I'm not picking on the sign review. I'm just saying, in the
Right,
future,
in
we
the
should have
future, I-
procedures in place.
Yeah.
So when you talk about goals for the planning board, that would be one of mine.
Yep.
And then set a budget,
great.
say, how much does that consultant cost us? How much does that lawyer cost us? So to pass an article might
Right.
cost us 20 grand. Okay, build that into our
Like
budget.
MAPC really has walked us through that.
That's just my vision.
Yeah.
You're
So
way off, but
to that point, I think, to your point about the, if you have basically a table and it says this is allowed or prohibited, it takes away a lot of language. It's the same thing that needs to be done in the recodification. If you apply that to the signage, you could remove probably pages of language because it just fits the chart. And we just haven't had zoning that's worked that way here, and I would love to see it that way because it's so much easier to use. But this is where I thought the recodification was going to be helpful, is that we would get that done as a total reformat of how our zoning bylaw is, and then that becomes in that process, that whoever's doing that for us is making recommendations to us how we work on new articles, how they're structured. And maybe that will help us be able to do them ourselves or not, but at least it sets a framework for how they're done. Because a consultant still needs to know the framework, how we're going to want to structure the recodification. And you know, definitions is one. Like, so definitions that right now you'll find scattered throughout our zoning code makes no sense. Normally you go right to the front and you go to the definition section and everything ties back to the same thing.
Awesome.
And the signs would do the same thing, right? And so, and then everything when you're saying something's allowed or not allowed, or you have the tables of regulations, like the dimensional regulations, like you even started with the checklist. That's the standard way zoning is. So we need first to get to the standard level. And that way it'll be much easier when we're working on something to work off of a standard.
And to something that Meredith brought up a little while ago was, you know, we have, as the town and as a board, have gone without staff for a period of time. So essentially, the planning department has saved the town some money, you know, in salaries. So that money should be available perhaps to the planning board, so then we could use some of those funds for consultants.
So that's a good point about the free cash. I don't know what the situation is there, but if a request could be made for free cash for the codification, that's something that's been on our list for a long time, and it would save money.
Yeah.
Planning department, building department, save money because it would be so much easier to use. And
So can we get a list from Nick as to what the savings has been from not having staff at the planning department? And then request that for part of our budget?
Or just give us a big raise.
I think I would leave that, Liz and Nick can, you know, iron that out, but I think certainly we haven't spent anything. Our economic feasibility study came from last year's budget, so we still have our full budget that could be spent for a consultant if we needed to hire a consultant at any point on one of these things. But we might have at least a rough draft to start from, that things that could be taken out. Like, I know even with the traffic mitigation, KP Law looked at that and they're like, okay, you can take out this whole initial section. You don't need to state everything that was changed with, you know, in the beginning of the article. So there's things that Nick suggested. All the definitions, there were, if you remember in the sign bylaw, there were like 3 pages of definitions. Nick said maybe that could be taken out and just put into the definitions section, reducing the size of the article. So
I don't remember having those issues with the East Milton Square overlay. How did that start? I mean, I think it started before I was on the board, but that seemed to go very, very smoothly.
it was written
Josh.
by MAPC.
MAPC wrote that,
So
and
we came to them with a concept saying, hey, we've got this section
Yes,
of town,
yes.
we want to overlay zone it.
and they
They
did all
We
the
gave them
public
bullets,
output.
And they
They
worked
based-
everything out.
They based East Milton on Milton Village, and they wrote both.
Okay.
And then they wrote the Milton Village for the Master Plan Implementation Committee, and that committee turned it over to the planning board and made a few more edits out without MAPC. But we had some people at the time, you know, like Kathleen O'Donnell, who knew how to write zoning and was an attorney. So we were able to make the edits without needing to go back to MAPC. But then they used that final version as their basis starting point for East Milton.
So, I mean,
And Nick, I mean,
Design guidelines.
Tim Zerwinski for MBTA communities used the state's model bylaw as his starting point. And then that's what became the things that we
yeah,
worked
that
on.
was mandated, I
original-
get that part, but East Milton Square was not mandated. And it was just a great process, and I would love
It
to see
was.
us do more of that. Because we
And I-
weren't beating our heads against the wall trying to define.
So that's one of the things that I think right now, not to jump down, but the Economic Development Plan, the MAPC, we last October we actually had brought MAPC to begin to initiate an economic
I remember that,
plan.
yeah.
And we went around and talked about areas that we thought were, you know, high traffic areas or what, you know, identifying those different areas. what happened was we had a contract, it was grant funded, and that funding was based on federal funding, which was promised through 2027. But what happened was that federal funding was discontinued, and so the state did not continue that funding until it actually terminated as of June, the end of this past June. So that funding, we did like just the very first basic step, but that funding source has expired. Okay. So now what we thought we had plenty of time, we had sort of put on hold because Tim left at that point. We had, just the turnover, and then we got honestly really busy with MBTA, and we were in full going, strong with the East Milton overlay zoning. So that became our focus, and we didn't move forward with the economic development plan. But this was something that we haven't spent any money, and Nick said there are some grant sources that he's currently looking into. He's also looking into, he's asked MAPC to come back and say, can we narrow that scope? Can we still get what we want to accomplish and maybe narrow the scope of what we were asking on the economic development plan? What would that cost? But he said if we don't get the comprehensive plan that we would like, that's something also that he mentioned free cash, because he felt like that's something that's important enough for the whole town-wide to do an economic development plan, and that's something that he could see us going to that free cash for.
But back to the same consultant, and yeah, I got it.
And MAPC, because MAPC had initiated that work, so it would make sense that, because they were going to do, their next step after the holidays was to start doing a survey and public outreach. And it's also one of the goals of the select board that they're aligning their set of goals, and the select board has also identified an economic development plan as one of their goals as well. So it would be a mutual effort. So it should be something that we could get free cash to pick that back up. Cool. And have them sort of take that forward for us. So I didn't mean to jump forward, but that was something that we had just talked about. This is something, the open space and recreation plan has been going on for a long time with the consultant Horsley Witten. It's under the planning department. I'm the representative to that committee, but it really, it took, and it's still in process, but identifying all the conservation parcels in the town, identifying what's DCR land, identifying what's conservation land, what is under the Conservation Commission, what is under, it's conservation, but it's under private ownership, such as the Eustis Estate and different Wakefield Estate, all the different areas. So it's been really trying to map those out. The last, before Tim left, Horsley Witten was going to send it to the Conservation Commission for them to review. And before it went public to everybody, we were going to have them sort of comb through it, make sure that that was their understanding, then go to the Parks Department to make sure, because some of it's parks land. So there's all these different entities that are involved in the open space in town. And then sort of, they were working with our GIS consultant to sort of map those. So that's where that is, but different people had written different parts, like MPIC, I had written some of the history of the open space or updated what had been updated in the past.
So do you have a time frame now? Because we all received that email from Rob Lee Vashram, Parks Chair.
So I responded, so not yet. Obviously, Liz would be the liaison to that group, and we have Horsley Witten leading it, but wanted to let Liz get settled in first and then resume setting up maybe a meeting with that. So I know the select board has done reappointments for that committee. Okay. So it's a matter of just reaching out to Horsley Witten and saying, introducing yourself. Craig was wonderful to work with. Okay. And maybe see where.
Is there a chair for the committee?
I think I had been appointed to the committee when a meeting I wasn't there. But so right now we would need to
you leave the room.
appoint a new, we would need to appoint a new chair. But there's representatives from the Parks Department, from the playground planners, all the different, it had been Ted Carroll for a long
Okay.
time from Parks. He had been sort of the, Mark Boyle is on the board. He's a sort of a community at large representative who's the secretary.
Okay.
So
I just,
Becky Simons is on it. who's
I
a
know that Rob Levash learned through the recreational master plan that they're working on, that having that plan, the open space and rec plan is required for eligibility for the park grant program. So they're anxious to get it done so that they're eligible to apply for those
So
grants.
we do have a master plan, a Parks and Rec. And that's what I kept telling Nick. I'm like, I don't know
This
that,
is an update, right? The open space?
this is an update to the original, but there is an original. So I don't know.
Is it something that the state views as being expired, just like the housing production plan? Do you know?
That's what I don't know. That's why I said Nick should be the one to.
I know in Braintree, they just gave them a 2-year extension just like that. It was kind of interesting. They just wanted, the town to be eligible, to maintain eligibility for certain
Yeah.
things. And that was just like in the last 6 months. I'm not really sure why. We had already voted CPC funding for the plan, and so that was why I was involved in it. But then they just gave them a 2-year extension just like that.
So we might
like,
have to get that
what,
up.
7 years to 9 years or something? I thought they used to be 5, but now it's like, I think it went from maybe 7 to, I don't know. It was a lot, it was a good amount of time
Yeah.
where the town, basically doesn't have to produce.
I think ours is quite past that.
Yeah.
As my
Yeah.
recollection, it's like 15 years.
Okay.
They're not doing an extension for that.
They're not gonna get an extension,
We
right?
had the acquisition of the Forbes Woods property, so that was included in there.
So was this driven by somebody wanting to get eligible for some funding?
No, I think this was just Tim wanting to do an update, but
Okay.
But really, I think I've been on the committee and it's been like 5 years. I mean, we've been working on this.
Part of it is that there's, you'll see that there's very little sort of available land for whatever needs that are out there. And there's a lot of recreation needs, like where to put a field has been really challenging for them.
Okay.
And then I think just like when there was, like where can we put a new animal shelter? There was a lot of difficulty finding a piece of property for that. So they just need to know like what are the properties that are available for anything, whether it's a field or whether it's something else that the
Which has
town
been
needs.
good because I think people look at Milton and they're like, oh, there's so much open green space, but they don't realize it's either protected, it's private, it's in conservation, it's DCR land, we can't develop the Blue Hills, so I think there's an educational element to this where people are learning, like, where can we put a school? Like, there was no,
I thought
like,
there was no land left after the land swap, right? That was the last parcel, and then we put all the other land in conservation,
there's very little.
right?
There's some, but very little, I think.
Very little. The town has not been good about, which is part of the preservation
Right, we
plan,
need to buy land.
that we should be acquiring land, whether it's for soccer
Or
fields.
not put it in conservation. Jesus.
Well, that we
That's
should
what
be,
Tim's problem was.
that we
Well,
should be
right.
protecting more.
And part of the problem is when you look at a request, like when I know that that the Animal Shelter Building Committee and the School Building Committee both went to former planning director and said what parcels are available. And that's part of the reason why he wanted that update, is
Yeah.
that there's not a good record of what's available
Yeah.
and what jurisdiction it's under. Is it
Okay.
under, Chapter 90, whatever it is, for parks or for whatever?
That's why we should have adopted the right to farm bylaw, because then the town would have first right of refusal when a farm goes to sell. So there's a benefit to giving out tax abatements to farms, but the town is not good about that. So now they've lost their eligibility.
Really?
Another kick in the gut.
Like, talk to Liz
Well,
about
we can, maybe that
Board
can
of
be.
Assessors.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, so these are just highlights,
Can we talk briefly about the historic
Production
preservation
plan?
Well,
sorry.
I want to do the historic preservation master plan quickly.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's on here,
Yep.
because the chair of the Historic District Study Committee came to us, and we heard from, J.D. Wild. And I was thinking about this, and is there any way to sort of have this kind of district and address his concerns? I think the only way, because this district would have the power to deny, even if the planning board approved a project that came in under the overlay. The only thing that maybe could be done is what their jurisdiction falls under. And one of the things I was thinking of was like whether this board wants to get involved in helping them. Because otherwise, I don't think there's going to be a lot of change from what they had before to what goes to the spring town meeting. So I actually thought, and I think it's something that I may have put in our report, is that they should have a consultant, a historic preservation consultant. So I'm wondering whether it's too soon to come back with that district, and whether it should come after historic preservation master plan, and then you can have that historic preservation expert can help with the bylaw. So I just wanted us to kind of bear that in mind.
Or make them subordinate to us, so there's not two competing boards
I
like
just
JD.
don't
Can't
think
do that.
state
This is-
law allows that.
This is the establishment.
Yeah,
And actually.
It'll be a problem then.
yeah, that's what I think too. But one thing is, like, I was looking at, could we do like a definition of a building? So that is that would be subject to it? Because if a building hasn't been maintained, and so now the windows are all vinyl and the siding's vinyl, and there's very little historic material left, why would that fall under this?
Well, like the hat
So that
shop, right?
gets- Well, so an
building
example like
should be
that, like
torn
if say the Ferrucci building were to come before, that would be a committee. So this is this article is a first step to creating the committee, but it doesn't create the committee. It doesn't say who the committee is or what their responsibility
The authority is established in it if you read it.
So
Or we should ask town council if I'm mistaken about that.
So the preservation plan, could identify different, and we have different historic districts in town. The Lower Mills, Milton Village has the most significant number of historic projects that have been actually surveyed and explained why architecturally or whatever it is. The problem, and because I thought JD did a great job in his presentation.
Fantastic.
And I really took it to heart what he was saying and what his concerns are. The way JD goes about approaching his projects, who's to say that another developer will have that same standard? And we do have design guidelines in there, but I do think that maybe a consultant might help them. And again, I keep forgetting her name, but Jennifer.
There's a number of good consultants for historic.
Jennifer Goldson?
No, not Jennifer, who also is very talented, but Jennifer Doherty, is it Jennifer Doherty?
Oh, yeah.
She was with Mass Historic,
Yeah.
has joined the Barrett Group. So
Oh, that's good.
she's now with Judy Barrett,
That's good.
specializing in historic preservation, and she has
that's
the
good.
background. So I was thinking maybe she could be somebody to come and
Mm-hmm.
facilitate this and talk about how this can be implemented, how this can work for the town of Milton.
So one other thing I'm going to mention is that the bylaw references the report. And I looked through the report. Early in my career here in Boston, I served on the Bay Village Historic District Commission, which is the same kind of commission.
Right.
And we had a report that was pretty detailed about what's considered important characteristics, whether it's a building that's one of the contributing buildings or what kind of features are, defining features. And there's not that in this report And I also owned a property that was in the Fort Point Channel Historic District, and that they have a very detailed report there too. And so, and I went before them for changes that we were proposing to make. I think we would need a more detailed report that the bylaw would refer back to. So I'm just
We
thinking.
could have specific buildings that, are you
Right,
saying?
because some buildings are like what used to be the funeral home at the corner of Canton. That was built in the 50s. And if you look through the list, there's probably 10 buildings that were built in the 50s that don't have, I don't think those are the ones that people would be most concerned about. JD
So
probably
those are-
owns a couple of the ones that people would be most concerned about. So
So what it addresses is not only the current existing historic buildings, but if there's a new building, to make sure that there's a cohesive look to new construction as well.
But he also is concerned about who would be on this commission, who would have the decision-making authority to say, you can't tear down that 1950s building. You're going to have to do something next to it or on top of it or around it or whatever. And that's a legitimate fear. It's without being more specific about what are the characters, what are the buildings, and what are the features that are most important to be preserved, it'll just,
I think that's a next step.
but the bylaw sets it up. The bylaw sets it
to
up
have that,
now,
right.
so that it doesn't, there's no guidance to them for that next step, honestly, because there's a lot of history in this, but it's not the physical structures. There's no guide, there's very little on the physical structures themselves. There's nothing, it says like what the style is, but it doesn't say, anything about like, is it, like for example, in mill buildings, one of the features that is defined as one of the character defining features are the windows.
Right.
And the window patterns of the muttons, et cetera. Because it's that and the brick that establish those as mill buildings, right? There's nothing here that's really saying this is what's establishing this as a really important physical building. I understand the history part, it's all well defined. So somebody comes up to a group that's appointed and says, these are what I think are the most important features of this building historically. And the members of that commission at that point won't have a guide. And if you establish it first, I can see why the property owners would be worried, because they don't know what's going to come next, right. And it's already in place, and you don't know how they're making their decisions.
It has to come back before town meeting, though.
Yes, but
I think once
they need
that
expertise
committee-
to help them get it over the finish line. I don't see it being passed.
As drafted,
Yeah, like-
there's some problems.
For instance,
Yeah.
you say brick, and I love brick, and I am concerned about, there's a trend now of doing murals on brick. Would we be damaging historic brick buildings with the mural just to satisfy a current trend? So I think identifying buildings with a brick facade, like, okay, we recognize this brick is, X amount of years old, and on this particular building, there should not be a mural, but on this brick, where the bricks are newer.
So again,
that's too
I don't have an opinion right now. I just, that's why I think maybe a consultant like Jen Doherty, who's with the Barrett Group, might be a good facilitator for this, to answer those questions and how the process works. I mean, if every developer was like JD and would come in and do the work that he's doing, I wouldn't feel.
He's the one who's worried about it. So
He's worried about
so
it, right?
if
We don't want to prohibit him from.
Right.
We're only trying to create the list tonight, right?
Yeah, we're just trying to create the
solve
list.
the
Yeah,
problem at the same time.
Well, what I want to,
I'm just
exactly.
2.5
You're
hours
right.
into it.
No,
Our goals.
absolutely.
It's a great agenda item.
Our goals, yes.
But, and that's not even, yeah. And I didn't have that local historic district, but I think that what you're tying it into is having a
I think-
preservation plan,
yes.
community, which also would be a consultant. And I meant to
Yes,
bring,
together.
I meant to bring, and I'll drop some off at your office, some examples of different towns. I think Sudbury, Tim had printed off some really comprehensive, and a lot of the work, we've already done the surveys of the properties, we know our historic districts, a lot of it just is putting it together and sort of creating that preservation plan, but we can add on anything further.
And not for tonight, but for another night, we should go through the 47-page report and extract out of it other items that we want to add to our 26 list.
Yes, yeah. Yep, I agree. So,
This report, the implementation committee
the
report?
implementation committee report, yeah,
Yep.
Okay.
yeah. I think that could be good, because I think some of those things are in here,
There's some overlap.
there's overlap here. But you're right, there may be things that we might want to prioritize above these, so. All right, so that was it for this evening.
The housing production plan, just wanted to understand,
yeah.
is there some,
Make
but
sure.
is that happening?
So
update?
I added that because it came across my radar that the existing plan expires in 2025, maybe it already expired.
It already did.
Yeah, okay. So that's something that should be updated.
So one of the importances of that is it protects us from 40Bs if we have a housing production plan in place and we push developers towards those parcels. Is that why that's so important?
You can get temporary safe harbor if you're making progress on
Right.
the production, not just permitting, the production of units. So, for example, like the Winter Valley project would probably have been enough to say, okay, no more 40Bs this year, instead
We
of getting
missed it 'cause
slammed
that
with them all. Now we're vulnerable,
I understand,
but we also,
The housing production plan expired, or that parcel wasn't in it?
it expires every 5 years. And you don't have to, it doesn't have to be just those parcels, but you have to show that there's a path. And if all the projects that are built now, according to what I've heard, that we're going to reach our subsidized housing, it's always a moving target, because my understanding is they don't change your calculation until each 10-year census, right? So we have another 4 years.
We have
But
25 permitted ADUs that are going to skew it, which is a drag. Right, that adds to our total. The 25 ADUs that are permitted add to our total production cost.
yeah, but
Production numbers.
you'll see that at the next census.
Understood,
Yeah.
understood.
So we're going to have a little bit of protection, but it's good to have the plan in case something doesn't go forward, or, in 4 years when we have the update, all of a sudden we're going to be short again.
And is that something we do? The planning board does the housing production plan?
So the last time it was updated,
Consultant.
I served on the committee, and it was a committee that Select Board member Melinda Collins, chaired. And I think there was somebody else serving from the planning board
So
too.
do they spearhead that, or do we? Like, who's responsible for that? Because it expired, so
Yeah, I think it's-
who was supposed to keep
Typically
it?
comes out of I mean, my experience has been it would come out of like a planning department. It's sort of like, kind of considered on the community development side of the house to some extent. But that doesn't mean that it has to, that it can't come out of your, the selectmen or the Affordable Housing Trust or I mean, I don't know yet enough, like the different groups that are involved in some of these,
It was a
some of these
committee.
efforts.
It was a committee, but there was also a consultant.
There was a consultant involved, yeah.
That word again.
Consultant, yes.
And
Well, especially when something that's timely, you
Yeah,
don't want
yeah,
to, you
yeah.
don't want to let it lapse, so, if
100%.
you want to get something done.
yeah, it'll
sooner
be
rather than
interesting to
later.
see the data, about the new development and the new permitting, since that last plan.
Yeah.
There's been, like we said, the 500 units, but there's also Wolcott Woods and,
I have a meeting next week with, Milton's a member of the South Shore Home Consortium, I think that's what it's called, yeah. So, I can try to bring this up at the meeting and just kind of pick some brains with some of the other members of that group.
I thought that Nick had reached out to the consultant who had done the last one.
That's what
and-
Katie Conlon recommended, and I gave
Yeah,
Cheyenne that
Yeah.
information.
And I-
Oh, good, okay.
And I
So-
thought
so-
that she was interested.
She
so-
was interested, and she had done the plan, so it would be very easy for her to simply make those updates, because she has sort of the history and
Get the
provided that.
foundation. Yeah, good. Well, that's great. So that's already moving forward.
And she's, yeah,
Okay.
so
Awesome.
hopefully that's who Nick has reached out to.
Okay, good. All good.
Good. Well, these are some good goals for us for the next year.
Just a few
And
things.
Just a few.
It's
Better
aspirational.
hire that
That's
assistant. Telling you.
Hopefully
We're gonna go.
soon.
No,
Hopefully soon.
this
We'll
is all
see.
good.
Build your team. It's awesome.
Oh, yeah, so did we get that in the update? The official update?
So we're getting close to an assistant, and I'm just kind of waiting. I'm just kind of waiting on the final, references and things like that. So
Right.
fingers crossed.
All right.
Good.
Someone else hasn't snapped them up.
And then how
Snapped
about,
them up in the meantime.
how about on the administrative support, like on the meeting minutes, for example?
Yeah, I know. I kind of pushed those to the side for now. This was the assessment. I was like, okay, I don't have to write any decisions,
Yeah.
so I'm not worried about minutes right now.
Yeah.
But they need to get done. I mean, we're already behind, I think, like maybe eight meetings.
Yeah, Julia, who was,
Yeah, we had
The-
5 sets of minutes, I think that
yeah,
were,
and was fairly detailed in the minutes that were kept. You can see whether you agree with the level of detail before
what I was
the new
saying.
person
they were
gets.
more detailed than the select board's minutes.
Yeah, and so,
I thought they were, honestly, I thought they were the perfect
okay,
balance between detail and brevity.
Yeah,
okay.
So, yeah,
Yeah,
because I mean,
I
if someone can get a 2.5-hour meeting into 3 pages, then
that's good.
they must be really good at their job.
Yeah, she did a good job.
Yeah, it's,
We'll shorten
Yeah.
the meeting so it's not as great a
Oh,
challenge.
okay.
Yeah. Right, we're going to cut those in half.
That's also aspirational. Liz.
This is good. All right. So with that, if there's nothing else, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Second? All in favor?
aye.
All right.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.